No, which is a shame. Right, hold on, it's doing something. Right, here we are, guys. Yeah, we're absolutely live. There's a few people online already, I didn't even realize. So greetings and good afternoon to Facebook, YouTube. Nice to see you all. Well, we can't see you. I can just see the panel members. As you can see, I'm going to go in a clockwise rotation of who's on the screen. You've got Brother Naya Imara. Please introduce yourself, Brother Naya.
My name is Brother Nia Imara. I put a brother there because I don't want people thinking I'm female. I'm the founder of the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools since 2007. The priority is to put all the Black-run African heritage supplementary schools on one website, on a regionalised website, so parents can find the right resource to help their children progress. Also do resources for home education and try and provide information about full-time African heritage schools. Next. Who's next?
Who's next?
Emmy?
Hi everyone, my name is Debbie and I've been home educating my 3 children for 10 plus years. My eldest is 17. I took her out of school when she was 6, and my 2 youngers are 9 and 11. And I also am the director of Black British Parent, a safe space for Black families to share information and discuss things that are prevalent in our community. I think Cheryl's paused.
Oh, okay, let's carry on. Just carry on.
All right, Selena.
Hi everyone, my name's Selena Carty. I am the founder of Black Poppy Rose, a symbol to remember the African, Black, West Indian, Pacific Islanders' contributions to history outside of slavery narrative since the 16th century. So I take this work all over the world, educating our communities about the differences and the similarities between our cultural and historical contributions. So I do that, and I'm a cultural and ancestral consultant, Afrocentric genealogist. So I help people to trace their ancestries, especially of those of us in the diaspora who have an issue with identity about where we feel we belong, what people are trying to classify us as, for us to be able to understand who and what we have decided we are to be, but using our history as a guide to be able to look at the strengths and things that we've overcome to be able to get to this point.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So as you can see, these are our panel members today, and I've obviously given a lot of time. Let's make sure that we have enough time to hear from everybody properly about their views, thoughts and opinions on home ed. So I'm going to start with Debbie, because Debbie is a home eder. She's been doing it for many, many years. And one of the questions that parents always ask Debbie is, I work full time, so how will I be able to home ed?
I personally don't work full time. My husband works full time and I'm at home. So my situation is very different. But I have heard from other families that use different resources around them. So some families might have family members that can assist them. Some families may have, they might be able to use a childminder, an Ofsted registered childminder. And some people use, I think it's the vouchers, care vouchers that they get from the local council. I think, I'm not too sure because I don't use it myself, but these are things that people have said. Also, I think I wrote this down. There's some people use Ofsted registered education centres such as Explore Learning. And they work that out part-time and have their children in those spaces. So there are ways to make it work, I think, if it's something you really want to do. And depending on the type of work you do, if you're able to work from home a few days a week or etc., that's something that can be done. I also know that some families might, I think the confusing thing is the idea around how to structure your curriculum or your schedule. And I think some people don't realize that, I would say, give or take maybe about 2.5 hours a day is really required for like a set home ed studies. I think personally, education is exploring all areas. So it's not just like just doing writing or sitting at a desk and looking at a screen and stuff like that. So for some families, if they're working full time, they might bang out the 2.5 hours work before they go to work, and then their child might go somewhere else in that meantime, or they might wait till they finish work and do it in the evening. So depending on how determined you are and depending on your circumstances, there's a lot of flexibility around that.
Yeah, I like to say, I mean, obviously, if a parent wants to go into a home education, you have to think about the long-term outcomes of what you're doing. Like, do you want your children to take the exams? Do you want your children to go to other people to get employment? Because you're going to need those exams to get employment from other people. If you're going to employ your own children, that's great. But if your children, there's the likelihood of your children going outside the community to go and find a job, which is more likely, you'll need those exams. And you need to think long term as to how much education you're going to give your children so they can take those exams. If they do very well and take those exams early, that's great. But the long term plan has to be whether they're going to take those exams or not, and where they're going to get their employment from. And if
absolutely,
it's going to be very difficult.
That's very true. What's your thoughts, Sister Selena?
Because I can't hear you, Cheryl. I'm not sure what's happening, but I'm assuming everybody else can hear you. So when you're ready for me, just point down because I'm following. So point down so I know it's me.
Okay.
I concur with all that you've said, but when it comes down to what we classify as education, I think that's a very ambiguous statement that we make when we're looking at our children. And because I look at history the way that I do, and I look at ancestry the way that I do, my advice to parents is to be realistic with yourselves as individuals, because there are a lot of things that we're faced with. There are a lot of things that we don't understand. There are a lot of things that we want to, give to our children that we don't have for ourselves. And by doing that, we put pressure on ourselves, and in turn, we pressurize our children to be products of something that we have never been. And then we push them. And by doing that, we push them away. So the first thing that I do and I teach is know about your damn self. Yeah, start with yourself. So this is my mum, and then this is my dad, right? And I know that we have a lot of issues in our families. We have a lot of traumas in our families, but the reality is history starts with you. So don't be teaching your child about Nelson Mandela, Marcus Garvey. You don't need to know anything else about anybody else until you start with yourself. Or let your children understand where they have come from, what you understand about your journey, and then say, like, I was born in 1982. I can then look at the world, what was going on in the world in 1982 to understand my place in it. And then when I look at when my mum was born, she was born in 1961. Jamaica wasn't free then, and she's from Jamaica. What did Jamaica look like or mean to her? And then you look at Jamaica, what has Jamaica brought to the world? And you look back, and you keep going back, and then in history, writings for Jamaica, you can't find past the 1400s. So what are you going to talk about then? Give yourself a realistic timeline of how to explore your history first, and then you can start uncovering and adding more bits to what's happening. And with the curriculums that we're faced with in this country, we look at Black British contributions because we have to start again in our homes. So when we're dealing with the curriculums, there is no issue with the curriculums. We're just not in it. So the idea is whatever they're talking about, there is history that allows us to be able to draw our narrative forward. And it's about us as parents learning that and enforcing that so we can share that journey with our children instead of continuously pushing them to learn, but we're not learning with them. Create a learning environment that starts with you and your families, and then you can start adding other narratives. But asking somebody else to be responsible for teaching you or educating your children about history is not going to make sense, because how they depict it is never going to be how you understand it. Work out what you understand first, and then you bring your best foot forward so that other people can learn from you, through you, about things that they may never learn in life.
Fantastic.
Yeah, when it comes to home education, I think the biggest problem that we have is that we keep on doing it in isolation. Because the biggest group of home educators is the middle-class Europeans. That's the biggest group that home educate. Maybe because they can afford it, because that is that one of them's out working, so they can afford it. But that is the biggest group of home educators in this country. And when they home educate in massive groups. They go on trips of hundreds, do mountain climbing, all kind of things. But normally, African heritage parents are doing it in a single silo by themselves. And there was a Facebook group called People of colour home educators, and it got shut down. I actually did a website. I said to the people on the Facebook group, we need to come off Facebook, what is on Facebook. So I created a website for Black home educators, African heritage home educators. They didn't use it, and it's still there. So if anybody wants to help me, revive the website and have a space where people of African heritage will get information about home education, then I can reopen it. But it's not something I can do by myself. So hopefully Debbie and maybe Cherry can all help out and have a specific space for African heritage home educators, because I'm getting phone calls every week where I want to take my children out. A lot of parents are frightened of bringing their children back because of COVID-19. So they want more around home education. So we need a specific space where they can go to and get information. So we need to recreate that website.
Absolutely. What's your thoughts, Debbie, with regards to like the real practicalities of home education, and as well as the academic side as well? Because that is an issue that I find with parents are like, oh, but I'm not academic. Oh, I'm not good at maths, English, or science, or so what can you give some, because you're living this, so what ideas could you give as well?
I think I definitely agree with both what Nia and Celine's been saying in terms of actually exploring and doing a bit of research basically, and have some sort of idea of what you want to achieve and your intentions for home education. And definitely first, I definitely identify with exploring self first, because personally, I think, like as a community, we have so much traumas that are passed on through generations, and we're not always acknowledged. We don't always reflect on that or acknowledge that. And so sometimes it can be passed on through our parenting, and we don't realize it because it's just normal to us, so I think these are explored first, because we don't want to be home educating our children and we're passing on traumatic things to our children. I'm not to say that's exclusive to our community, but I'm only concerned with those in our community. So that's where I'm coming from when I say that. I think it's important to explore self and understand what our own strengths and weaknesses are, and pay attention and observe our children as well. So, I mean, this whole lockdown quarantine situation, I think, was a fantastic opportunity for parents to get to know their children more and explore how their children learn and what their interests are. And those are the areas where we normally talk about in a home ed community, the whole de-schooling process, where for every year that your child's been in school, you do nothing for a month. Now, I know a lot of people freak out at this concept of doing nothing, but the doing nothing isn't exactly doing nothing. It's doing other things, finding other things to be involved in and engage in. For example,
life skills,
and grow vegetables, or do some art, or do like basic household science projects, and cooking and baking, and see what your children are naturally drawn to. I think that's important. And then seeing how you position yourself around your children, because I think people get this idea of teaching like coming from an authoritative place, which it doesn't always have to be that. And in terms of parents not necessarily feeling as though that they're so academic enough, I think anything you don't know, learn it with your child. Figure it out with your child. Your child will be able to grow and learn so much from knowing that they're not the only ones that doesn't know how to do something. And when they see you put that effort in, then it inspires them to want to learn as well. I think we're done are the days where a teacher stands at a desk and points at a child how to learn and what to do. That's not working. It never worked before, and it's not going to work in this day and age, particularly where children have information at the touch of their fingertips. Literally, they can watch anything on YouTube, anything on the internet, etc. And that's another example. I mean, if there's something you don't know how to do, for example, a maths equation, then you can type it in YouTube and figure it out and learn it with your child. There's so many accessible free resources around us. So I think I personally think just be patient with yourself, and be honest with yourself about what your capabilities are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, as I said, and just have fun. It doesn't have to be all serious and stressful.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And that is one of the key things that parents think. The other one is age dependent. So a lot of people, when the children are smaller, they find that it's slightly easier to deal with home education because the children are younger. Now, even with this whole COVID thing that's happened, a few parents are like every day, parents are coming, my 14-year-old won't engage, my 12-year-old won't engage, etc., etc. And like Debbie said, with regards to just chill. Do you know what I mean? Just chill out, because the panic of, oh my gosh, they've got GCSEs. Oh my gosh, they've got SATs. Oh my gosh. And it's like, but for who? You know, who are these SATs for? Who? And it really is about money. So what I would also ask as well, what would you say to parents with regards to those age groups and to even the GCSE side of things? Because there's many ways a child can get their GCSEs if you're that determined to get them. And just so parents know, you don't have to have GCSEs to go into further education. So both of you, Brother Naya or Brother Debbie, Sister Debbie, whoever wants to go first, roll. We've lost Selena temporarily.
I'll say, like, with the teenage age group, it does prove difficult to engage them, because I think the number one thing is they feel left out, because all their friends are going to school, got all their chat going on, all the gossip, and they really feel missed out. You know, when they're younger, it's not so much an issue, but as teenagers, they really feel missed out. So I would recommend home educators using the African Heritage Supplementary School System on a Saturday to get them engaged with other children and learning as a group. And also, you can keep up to date with current curriculum, because all the supplementary schools keep up to date with current curriculum, and a lot of them do have the added bonus of African history, either as a separate lesson or within every lesson. You're speaking about Imhotep when you're talking about science, when you're talking about you're studying the map of Africa when you're doing geography. So I highly recommend home educators are going to using the supplementary school education system to help you and help your child.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think also as well, with the GCSE side of things, it can be challenging and intimidating for parents. There are a few online resources that you can use. You can invest in a GCSE tutor. Some families in the home ed community will chip in and share a tutor together and do the lessons online so they can share the costs. Myself, unfortunately, I mean, I wasn't keen. I'm not really too keen on the GCSEs and A-levels and stuff personally, but in our situation, our circumstance, our family, my daughter wanted to do GCSEs and we supported her through that. Fortunately, there was a college in London that were offering free GCSE part-time for home ed students, so she was able to do that at 14 and then went on to do the next 15. So she done her GCSEs at 14 and passed. She passed all of them basically. So she set one in a year. It was maths, English, and science. Within the first year, and in the second year, she done a few other GCSEs. I think it was psychology she did. And I think that those are potential ways around it. So obviously look around in your local area to see what's available for your children in terms of home ed GCSEs. Definitely with the socialization, it can be very difficult. I find that when it gets to secondary school age, parents get cold feet and they put their children straight back into school thinking that they are able to continue on, which is fair enough. And at least they can be honest with themselves about it, because it's better that than their children perhaps suffering some other way or lose out. But there are other ways, like Nia said, in terms of supplementary schools at the weekend. Also, there's a lot of, and I don't live in London, but I know in London, I have friends that their children go to loads of extracurricular activities after school, stuff like that. So those are areas that they can actually get to socialize as well. So it might be a little bit difficult during school hours, but there are other ways to manage and work around it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Debbie. The after school clubs, which is open to everybody. So that's another good resource that's going to help your children. Also, in regards to what I was going to say now, good on mine. But yeah, in regards, also with the supplementary schools, what they do is they actually do separate courses or study groups for GCSEs. So it comes to a period of time, probably from like February, March onwards, they do a separate course for children coming to GCSEs as a study course. So you can get, if parents want to go for the GCSEs exams, supplementary schools do provide a separate studying area for people for that group. So, like I said, utilize the resources that are out there.
Absolutely. And even with regards to, do any of you have any sorry, go on, Selena. I know you missed can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, brilliant. Basically, what I was explaining to the audience is a lot of people say that they have issues with teenage children. It's easier when the children are younger, you know, because you have a bit more control. But when they get to teenagers and they, you know, develop a few attitudes and they're not engaging, do you have any advice that you can give to parents with regards to that, and as well as the GCSEs that, you know, we've heard about, which, like what has been said, we don't actually need GCSEs to go into further education, but just any tips that you can give to parents as well with regards to that?
Patience is the biggest thing, because we have an understanding, well, we think we know something. That's the problem here. And as parents, you know, we're coming from models where our parents were doing what was best for us, and in turn we're now bullying our kids and we're doing what's best for them. We don't listen well enough because we see the world from our eyes, and we know that it's hard. We know that we are targeted, we know we are stereotyped, we know all of these things, and we want to give our children what we consider to be the best opportunities to be somebody else's servant. And we haven't fully understood that the conditioning around education means that they have to go and work and adapt themselves for somebody else. So when they're being bullied, they have to just suck it up and just, you know, accept it because the job is paying the bills. So what I feel parents should be doing is being more patient with themselves, and understanding that protecting your children sometimes means giving them more time to understand themselves, to understand that there's a lot that they're going through, that they may not have a decision right now. And whereas you may feel that there's a time window, by the time you're 16, you've got to get X, Y, and Z. Looking at that model and seeing, is that really a good enough model for your child, for your journey, for where you are? And because I know a lot of parents, you know, we can't wait to get rid of our kids at 18. You're a big person, go about your business. But that mindset being conditioned with is what's keeping us back from actually growing with our children, especially with our teenagers. Because when they start going into that next rites of passage for adulthood, they have a different concept of life because they were born in a different era to us. So what they have seen, what they have understood, they're processing in the same way we have, but we don't take that time to understand that we went through what they went through. And because this is what was good for us is what's good for you. And because we're not prepared, we don't fully understand the world that we're living in. We think that the model that we've continuously been working on us, and we watch as our children, you know, they're not successful with their exams, and we wonder why. We watch as our children have to continue to repeat things, and then we keep pushing them to repeat it. You know, you're not this, you're not that. But if they're not grasping something, it's about what are they interested in and how will they grasp it. And as teenagers, they are finding their own footing, and as a result of finding their own footing, for me, it's important that we listen to them. We listen to what they're being exposed to. Because when we're looking at our young people, you know, musicians, footballers, they want to be on TV, they're TikToks, that's what the world's telling them to be interested in. So telling them about Black history when you haven't done it when they were children, well, what does that matter? It's not going to get them money, it's not going to get them a job. And when we're doing things on a supplementary basis, it's almost as if, well, why are we doing this at a smaller basis? Why is this not our full-time gig? Because if it's our full-time gig, then we can appreciate it. But if it's not, I'd rather be doing something with my time, like watching YouTube or watching whatever I'm watching. But it's very much about, for me, it's very much about having a conversation with them about life from your perspective, and seeing what they want to explore and open, and just be ready for when they're ready to, you know, go to that club, to go and have that lesson, to be interested in something, and that you're ready to go alongside them, because you can't lead them, but go alongside them and give them the support when they need it as and when on that journey.
Can I add to that as well, please? And the other thing as well, that for some families who may not feel comfortable with, I don't know, having certain conversations or being some sort of role model with their children, which I think parents should be the first role models for our children, but I understand everybody's situation is different. There are many organizations out there that offer mentorship to young people and offer free, you know, training for certain things as well. And another way around, I guess, trying to inspire our young adults, as it were, is we all need money. We all need to make money, and hopefully they're interested in making money. So perhaps creating some entrepreneurship sort of adventure or project with them to learn how to make money might be something that where you can include the basic skills like financial education, financial literacy, and all the basics that they need in to be self-sufficient, should I say. But yeah,
literally. What I was also going to ask, have any of you come across or into contact with, because we have a lot of parents who have children with additional needs, sensory processing, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, etc., and sometimes a parent can be overwhelmed with how to manage the child, again, particularly if they're older. What sort of hints or tips would you guys give? And particularly, I'll come back to you as well, Selena, because of the fact that you have Black Poppy Rose, and it is very, very informative. And as you said, learn about self first. What kind of hints and tips could you see? Because we know that within the school system, they're taught about King Henry VIII. The one, do you know what the funniest thing is? I can tell you the Battle of Hastings was in 1066. That's the one thing I remember from history that's stuck in my mind through school. And then even doing history was the slave trade, because I refused to do history unless I'd done Black history. So they came along and introduced the slave trade. And I would be regularly kicked out of class because I would ask, well, how come they're all adults? Where are their parents? And where are their parents' parents? And how come they weren't just born big and then taken? And that would get me thrown out of the classroom regularly, which I didn't mind anyway, because I'd go down to the high road and go to Marks and Spencer's and eat sandwiches and put them back on the shelf. Not to condone this, children. However, so, you know, what would you do by way of advice with regards to if children do have additional needs? I'm going to come to each of you, but go, Selena.
I would, with children with additional needs, for me, it's about time. Everything for me is patience and time, even though, you know, mine is quite limited. I'm learning as I go, I promise. It was shorter before, but I'm growing. I'm learning it as I go along. But for me, it's patience. And some tips I would advise is like breaking up your year seasonally. So doing something over a 3-month period. So find topics that we talk about World War I, for instance. And then we look at, if you're born in England, where in the world was where did World War I take place? And our families from any of those places. And then taking them on a journey. So we start storytelling, and especially children with special needs, it's about listening to how they learn. Storytelling is a very good one because they listen and, you know, sounds. And when I grew up reading, and my mum used to read to me, she used to change her voice for the different characters. And, you know, a big scene and just like a Shang-Chi, the griot, telling the storytelling, adding in the drums and things like that, bringing in that storytelling of history. So you're not just telling a story, you are teaching them, but they don't understand they're being taught. They just like you remember in 1066, there are key things that we remember, and about how it takes time. But again, it's about working with your community of people that you feel have the strengths that you need, that can support you with the work you're doing and reinforce you with the information that you can use to be able to develop these skills. But very much about breaking up your year. So every 3 months you do something new, or you move on for the same one thing, because you could be doing one thing a year, but looking at it from different angles, each part of the year, you're able to cover a variety of things without stressing yourself, without stressing your children. Look at the different levels of arts and crafts that you can incorporate. And look, again, as Debbie said, look at your children's skills. What are they good at? Some children are good at dancing. Some children are good at writing. Some children are good at drawing. Some children are good at, you know, all of this new technology. We've all got different skill sets, but it's about having that time to be able to look and listen and allow them to learn and absorb in their own way, because you're learning with them. Again, it's that patience, because as much as we all want our children to be doctors and nurses and, you know, dentists and, you know, politicians, there are other jobs in the world that are needed to be done. And it's about sometimes being realistic that your child may not be a doctor, and it's not because they're not brilliant, and it's not because they can't be a doctor, it's because that's just not their calling. And it's just about, you know, trying to take that time and understand them on the journey for when that calling comes. Because, you know, we didn't know about Maya Angelou till she was in her late 30s, and she lived her whole life. Did she know that she was going to become what she became at that age? No. Did their parents know that that's what she would become? No. But they would have pushed her in a direction that they felt was best for her. And I use her as an example because she's, you know, a role model for the world. From her words, did she consider herself to be a woman that would be known for her words? No. When you read about her history, that's not where she was going. But again, it's about allowing life to take you on that journey and just allow things to create in a way that we're able to keep ourselves mentally stable, because the world that we live in creates that instability regularly, and allowing ourselves to look at our children uniquely for their experience and not comparing them outside to other people, other things. Or, you know, this is not working as it works for Debbie, this is not working as it works for Brother Nia, this is not working, because we're all different people and our children are all different people, and just trying to reinforce that in ourselves, that what we're going through it's the first time it's happening to us because we're all new parents. Every new child is a new parental experience. We're the first parents, and just trying to give ourselves a break and not punishing ourselves from not knowing enough, not being enough, because we're not giving up. And if we are giving up, it's because we need rest and we need reinforcement to be able to take that. Again, it's about really just taking time with yourself journey and understanding that each child is unique, and to listen to yourself and to them to share the things that you feel that they will need to be better human beings in the future.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I'd like to come to the point I made before. We keep on doing home education in isolation because when our child is like 6 or 7, they think they want to be like a fireman or policeman or whatever. That's going to change when they're 12. That's going to change when they're 14. It's going to change, every year. But they need to experience something different to work out if there's something for them. So, like I said, we need to organise ourselves in terms of African heritage home education to have trips where we can bring children to these different industries and experiences, from as early as possible. So, we have to organise it properly as a community.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also think with regards to special educational needs, or learning difficulties, etc., or whatever, I guess labels that are attached to our children through the system. I don't know too much about them because none of my children have any of those labels attached to them. But I do want to make a point of saying that I think whatever it is your children is living with, to make sure or try to ensure that we study and learn as much about it as possible and see what resources are available to us. I'm aware that there's something called the EHC plan, and that can be, is that what it's called? Yeah. And those are there's some sort of funding that families can use in order to get the resources and access to certain resources that they for their children. Also, I'd like to think that children with some of these I don't want to say disabilities, but for lack of a better word, disabilities, they tend to have a fixation on certain things that they enjoy doing, or they have like an enhancement in certain skills, and those are things that we need to be paying attention to as parents and exploring that with our children. As said, the arts and creativity allows children to explore themselves and explore what's around them, and it's very sensory depending on the medium that they use, and definitely take advantage of nature and everything that's around them, because there's nothing more wonderful and freeing than being in nature, so that would be my contribution to that question.
Absolutely. I'll touch, as you mentioned, the EHC plans, and obviously with what I do with the Black Child Agenda, I come into contact with a lot of children, and there has been the interesting thing is there has been such an increase in the last now 5 years of children who have additional needs, whether that's ODD, ADD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, SEMH, social and emotional mental health, etc. And the interesting thing I find as well is that a lot of parents are struggling with how to go about the process. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to actually explain to parents what that process actually looks like. First of all, you don't have to go to the school per se to actually apply for an EHCP. If you go to whichever borough you live in, you can go to your local authority website or call the education department at your local authority and say that you believe that your child may need to be assessed. Now, they're supposed to send you a form. A lot of the times they'll shrug you off and say, go to your doctors. You need to probably go to CAMS, Child and Adult Mental Health Services. Now, I have a bee in my bonnet with CAMS per se, not to say they're not good at what they do, but they tend to come from a very, very clinical perspective. And to me, the end game always seems to be to give children tablets to, for me, numb them for hours of the day, to be, as far as I'm concerned, in the UK education system, miseducated a lot of the time. So they've dumbed down your child, and they don't really explain to you the long-term health effects or impacts that a lot of this medication actually has on our children. Now, the increase in Black children who are on these medications is absolutely shocking and phenomenal, but that's a different story for another day. So with regards to the EHC plan, so you can go to your local authority, go on the website, you can either download it and you fill out the initial part. Then you send that back to the local authority. Now, to get an EHC plan, your child does not need to have a particular diagnosis. The fact that there's needs, so what you're going to have to do as a parent, if you are a home ed in particular, is keep a diary of particular behaviors, particular triggers. If you have a child with autism, for example, and loud noises, or, you know, the TV flickering too much, it could be anything that you'll get a trigger from, and you'll find it hard to keep them to manage their behavior. Things like that need to be documented on a daily basis, because that's what the school is supposed to also do. Then eventually at some point an educational psychologist will probably come to see you at home, and then they'll basically watch your child for the day or for a couple of hours, and they'll take notes as to what they think or how they feel. Particularly with ASD and autism, you'll find that children don't tend to interact a lot with other children. They will probably prefer to play in silo or just go and take something from another child, and they'll be there in their own little bubble, and that's definitely fine. So things like that, they'll write a report. That report will go back to the local authority. Just so you know, this process can take up to 12 weeks. Sometimes it can be done sooner, sometimes later. But if your child is in mainstream education, for the 12-week process, the school is able to also apply for £6,000 of funding to pay for anything that your child needs while you're waiting for that EHC to be signed off by all parties. Now, there should be a series of meetings that takes place with the parent, the school, not necessarily educational psychologists. They're there to literally write the report and send it off. The parent, the school, and the local authority. So the initial process is you have that meeting, they lay out all the things that they feel where the child could do with some support. You as the parent will say, right, I agree with this looks good, blah, blah, blah. That then goes back to the local authority. They send you a draft. It comes back to you, the school, and everybody else. You go through it. If you're not happy, you get the option to pick and choose and take out what you feel would work and what won't work. Then everyone agrees, and it goes back to the local authority again. And then that's when the final draft is done and sent back, and everyone is able, oh, that's a long message, and everyone then is able to work with what's in the plan. Now, that's the key thing which I find with parents who have children at school. They don't know what their child's doing. They say they get one-to-one support, but they don't. However, if you're a home eder and you manage to get through this process and get a plan, your plan can also pay for, like, for example, I had a child in Southend-on-Sea. He had quite a few different issues. And one of the things was I wanted him to flexi school, which is a subject I'm going to come on to after with you guys. The parent wanted him to flexi school. So that's part-time home, part-time school. The school and the local authority said, absolutely not. I just gave them one side eye, like your parents would do, to tell you to sit down, and said, give me 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, that child was flexi schooling. His EHC plan, however, was paying for horse riding, hot yoga, visiting farms, doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things that young children, or he was 8 going on 9, things that he wanted to do. And I always say to parents, with regards to these exams and the SATs, that pressure doesn't need to be there. Allow your child to be exposed to the world, because you've got them in a tunnel vision and they're missing life. So the EHC plan will pay for those things, particularly if they're registered tutors, private tutors, nannies, all of those things your educational healthcare plan can pay for. Funding is from £6,000 right up to £56,000, depending on your child's specific needs, and they're all individual to your needs. If, for example, you do get an because I'm dealing with a case at the moment, you get an educational psychologist and you don't agree with the report, you can actually, like we did, pick apart every single sentence, word, syllable and vowel in that report and send it back to them, and they have to keep amending it until you are happy. If your happiness is dependent on the fact that, well, you're just not happy and you don't want your child to have an EHC anyway, then that's not going to work, because it's not about you. It's about the child and their needs, and making sure they get the right support around them, whether they're in school or you're home edding, and you can tap into the resources and support out there. And there are some classes, they're mostly European classes, but there are a lot of classes and activities specifically designed for children who have educational healthcare plans or who have additional needs. And I'll also say to tap into people like Chinyere Griot, who does a lot of the storytelling, because she's very hands-on and she's amazing at what she does. And then you've also got the sister in South London who does the autism. Oh gosh, her name escapes me, but if anyone
Bob, a second voice organization.
Vanessa second voice, that's it. Thank you, brother. So they do a lot of stuff with regards to autism. And then if you're in Birmingham, there's a few organizations. Just type it in and I'll remember to post it on my Facebook. So just to go from there with regards to the EHC plans and parents, if you're not sure what to do, that is something that is definitely a necessity if you know your child has additional needs, and try not to ignore it. No parent wants to know, or no parent wants to have their first child and they want their child to be different. However, as Selena said, and all of you have said, tap into your child's differences. You know, they're perfect in their imperfections, just like we are. Fire away. Has anyone else got? If you see me on my phone, it's only because people are asking questions. I've seen one here. It's only because people are asking questions online. So I'm just either responding and then I'm going to ask you them.
Yeah, sure.
As well. So I'm watching my phone because people are asking how they can log on. So I'm not being rude. And also here on the screen, I can see everything. And someone's speaking about Egyptians, but whoever's next, please fire away.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the process of actually taking your child out of mainstream school. Come across a few parents who do it the wrong way. They think I can say, look, I'm just taking my child out. There's nothing you can do about it. And next minute, you've got social services banging down your door and the police. So I think it's important that we discuss the process of actually taking your child out of school, because you do need the permission of the school. You need the agreement of the school.
You don't need the permission of the school. Go on.
But and also to do it in writing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not necessarily permission. What we fail to understand a lot of the time is when we're putting our children to school, those papers that we're signing a contract. And so the process in taking your child out of school is to basically send a letter stating that you're no longer following that contract. You don't want to be a part of what they're doing anymore, which is the deregistration process. And there's a standard letter you can get. There's a website which I used a great deal when I first took my daughter, because my daughter went to school when she was how old? I think it was, I can't remember, it's so long ago, but it was like the nursery school years, and I took her out when she was 6. And when I done my my own research, educating myself about the process, I came across a website called Education Otherwise. And if you go to that website, there's you can find out about the deregistration process. They have a standardized letter that everybody uses, so I'm sure all the schools are familiar with it. You just change the date, change the name, you don't have to change anything else, and email that to the school, as well as send them a signed for recorded delivery hard copy of that same letter. And after you've done that, you don't have to have any more conversations with the schools. They will, depending on the school, depending on your relationship with that particular school, they might still try and chase you up about it, but you don't have to respond to anything because you've already done the process. Not quite asking permission, it's just deregistering your child. But you will, after that process, potentially hear from, depending on your borough, the council you live in, the borough that you live in. You may get your local authority. They're supposed to contact you within, I think, 6 months to a year. Some people haven't had any response at all, or sometimes it takes them long. Sometimes they're on it a bit too much and pressuring parents. But it's about just educating yourself, informing yourselves with websites such as Education Otherwise, and NIA's NABWS website as well as perhaps just looking at the .gov websites. There's information on there as well about home educating your children and the deregistration process.
For me, when it comes down to understanding schooling and us deciding that we have a certain autonomy or freedom, it's also about being responsible about how you are communicating with those who are in authority. And although we are authoritative of our children, we also have to understand that we are in an infrastructure based around laws and acts and all kinds of other legislations that we have to adhere to. So as much as we'd like to homeschool our children and not answer to anybody, the key word here is safeguarding. And when it comes down to homeschooling, it's important that no matter what you try, you're not a failure. Even if you have to send your children back to school because it's not working for you, these are steps that we go along the process. And it's again about being able to have that open conversation so that we're not burning bridges behind ourselves for when we need that support. Because I know a lot of homeschooling parents who can't cope homeschooling their children because they didn't understand the full-time nature of it, as well as working, as well as dealing with, mum being sick, shopping, children going into therapy, your children having breakdowns, you having a breakdown, friends dying, murders, Black Lives Matters, all of the rest of these things, and the mental well-being that is shaken up within us, that we can't then continue to do what we have said we wanted to do, or the plan bigger than we had anticipated, and we haven't had enough time to put some of the things in place, and then we start to panic, and then as we panic, we then put that panic on the children. So when it comes down to schooling, as Cheryl knows, because she's out here protecting our children in the school, not all of our children are being abused in school, but there are great proportions of them that are. And it's again about the relationship that parents have with their schools on how they can include and bring in narratives. Because my son has been in and out of school, so I've homeschooled him his whole life. However, I put him in and out of school to see how I can get the work I do into the schooling system. And my son will take his GCSE, so he is prepped with that understanding that you will get that paperwork to be able to have access to do things in the way you want to do. However, it's not just about you taking a test one time and not being, when you're at school, you're not writing for 3 hours, but then you've got to go and sit for an exam for 3 hours, and you haven't got those skill sets. And then looking overall, but we're all in different places. So again, it's very much back to the.
Can't hear. Celine, we can't hear you, darling.
You got me?
Yeah.
You don't have to do this alone. So when we do it, because we're working from our mindsets, you don't have to do it alone. And as Brother Nia rightly said, the community is coming together. But what we find is, because we don't know enough about what we're trying to do, we don't want to show other people we're getting it wrong. We don't want to show other people that, we haven't quite got it together. We all don't have it together. But what we do know is that we want to go this way. We want to go this way. So who's going this way? And let's see who's going this way. A lot of what other people do don't work for me. But it doesn't mean that I can't keep going that way. We might want to go, to Kew Gardens and learn about, and learn about the difference between which bush is good in England, which bush is good in West Africa, which bush is good in Jamaica. And when we're learning about herbalism and what's good, that's one angle from that's an analogy that I use regularly to show the differences between learning and where people are. And then you look at the conventional methods, what's the difference between paracetamol, ibuprofen, and aspirin? Because these are things your children will need to learn and know as you're going forward into the future. So it's about looking at how you understand education from yourself, because just because they can read books doesn't mean they know how to be who you want them to be. And then we put that, again, these expectations just because we know it because we've lived it. We know it because we've seen the examples. We know it because we've been observing a lot of things going on within our lifetimes. And by doing that, it's allowed us to become the people we are. And we do continue not to allow our children to become what they can become based on their experiences. And when we're looking at the schools, because in schools, you not only have bullying from teachers, you've got the bullying from the children. And from the uneducated children who think they know that they're better, that they are better than your children. And then they devalue your children, which then creates self-esteem problems. So again, it's very much about trying to make more time to listen, because we are so busy as parents, work, cooking, traveling, commuting, making sure that they're fed, making sure there's balance, all the rest of it, that we don't have enough time to listen to our children. And when we're growing them into adults, we're growing them into adults who don't know how to listen. Then they have children and they're trying to erase all the things that their parents done that they feel was wrong. But as parents, we're always going to get things wrong in regards to our children. So we're trying, think I remedied what my mum did or what I feel my mum should have done. Now my son and my daughter will have issues with me of their own rights of what my mum didn't do, but what have I've done. And these are things we've just got to live with. So again, try and understand your own self and your own position. Be content with that. So no matter what people want to say to you in the future, you know that you did your levels best and you went out to the community and tried to find out what resources were available, whether or not we do them in our Black community or not. Because it's not about restricting ourselves just because it's not in our communities. We didn't create the infrastructure. We didn't create, all the legislations. And there are a lot of us who are not doing the things that we need to be doing. So again, it's about having that conversation to find out if it's in our communities. And if it's not, about doing the research necessary to get those resources from wherever we can ascertain them.
Give me 1 second, Naya. There's just a few comments here from a few Facebookers. Hold on, let me scroll down. My computer's decided to go slow. Facebook user, hello all, greetings, afternoon. This is really useful from Pauline. Someone says, we studied the Egyptians in secondary school and my best mate informed the teacher the Egyptians were Black and asked why weren't the pharaohs that we were studying Black. The whole class laughed at him, so I stood up and said that he and I learned this from his uncle who taught kids on Saturdays at his mum's house. This was in 1979. Hey, where's it gone? Come back here. This was in 1979. The teacher basically defended this by saying his uncle wasn't an actual teacher like he was, and that he was wrong. We both got laughed at by all the kids in the class. I would guess that was saying, yeah. Literally. And then Garvey Lumumba, who's on YouTube, Garvey Lumumba School, said great information and discussion, love literacy, great discussion. There is some feedback from a device which is interfering with the sound. Is there information about a curricula for homeschooling? No, there isn't yet, but I do believe one is coming. Right, how do I get that off the screen? So, yes, Brother Neil, you were going to say something.
Yeah, you mentioned the flexi schooling before. So that's an agreement with the parent and the school to have the child to go into the school on a part-time basis, whether it's 2 or 3 days a week. So that's an agreement with the parent and the school. So that's a good way of moving forward, or a good way of gradually getting your child out to full-time home education. They don't necessarily do it all the go, but it does need to have the agreement of the school. And if you get that agreement from the school, then that's brilliant, because it'd be ideal if the school has the interest of the child first, rather than the income for their child.
Cool. So with regards to the flexi schooling side of things, like you said, it is down to the agreement of the school. Now, with that, because the thing is with that is that a lot of schools have never even, a lot of head teachers have never even heard of flexi schooling. That's the reality why a lot of them say no. So you'll rock up to the school, oh, I want to flexi school my child. Well, no, you can't. And it's like, thank you very much and goodbye. It could be like that. However, I always say to parents, you need to put together a very, very watertight argument as to why you feel it is more beneficial for your child to be at school on a part-time basis. This particularly works well with children who, with parents who have children with additional needs. This also works really well, particularly when they say that children have behavioral issues. Now, I don't believe any child has behavioral issues for no reason. Particularly when they're at school, I find that there's two different types of reports. When they're at home, there's one type of report, and when they're at school, there's another. So rather than the schools then saying, oh, well, you should just take them out for the day, which is unlawful, by the way. Oh, take them home to cool off. That's all unlawful. You can actually write down or write to them the reasons why you feel that it will be beneficial. My son doesn't like, or my daughter doesn't like a lot of crowds. You know, they're not coping well with the speed of the lessons. So we understand the school doesn't have the resources to give them one-to-one because they don't necessarily have an educational healthcare plan. You know, there's a lot of reasons why a child it would make sense for parents to be able to homeschool. And then you can go, you write the letter to the school first, and then if you choose to, you can go and have a meeting with the head teacher and whichever year group, depending on what type of year your child is, and then you can agree to do half days, or like you said, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and then they go to school that way. So that is normally what parents have found. When parents have actually done that, they've just decided to take their children out altogether, because a lot of the reasons why they were flexi schooling was for the socialization for their children. But then when they realize that there are a lot of social activities, particularly for home ed children, and a lot of the museums and different centers and blah 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 all now cater towards home educated children, they'll do particular days and special lessons and things like that, then you don't necessarily have to send them into what I will classify as a hostile environment sometimes to be able to fulfill them being socialized. So it is sometimes quite difficult. However, I believe that with this COVID, more and more schools and head teachers, or heads, I won't even call, because a lot of them aren't teachers, more and more heads are slightly more receptive to the option of flexi schooling, because a lot of teachers I've spoken to myself don't necessarily want to go back to school either. They don't want to go back because they realize that their own children have thrived whilst either they've been at home or the classroom setting is much smaller. So it's quite interesting. This time now, for 2021 onwards, is going to be absolutely groundbreaking by way of, I believe, particularly our community taking the sole responsibility for our children's social, emotional, and mental well-being and care. Because some of the things I've seen where you've got parents saying, oh, my child is failing in school, his reports are all bad, so on and such like, to where now it's like, oh my gosh, my child is doing algebra without pen and paper, they're doing all this, they've learnt that, they've started their own business, my son's writing his own book. And I'm like, girl, I've been telling y'all from a long time, technically them. And then the other thing that I want to discuss with you lot as well, a lot of it, and as all of you have already said, with regards to, and particularly Lies hammered the point home about homeschooling and isolation. What I genuinely believe, and it's something I'm working on, Anaya, Deb, and yourself, Selena, we can all speak, and then also obviously the second panel as well, is getting up a homeschool network, a for us, by us solution, whether you're in Leeds, whether you're in Scotland, whether you're in London, whether you're in Kent, wherever it is, that you know that within that area there is something around for the homeschoolers, that you guys are going to meet up on a particular day and time and whatever, having those conversations. So that's something worthwhile that we can speak about again. Let me just check, because these comments are coming in. Just discuss amongst yourselves. Great information, great discussion. Marlene says, thank you for a fantastic discussion. Is this being recorded too much later? I need to dip in and out. Someone else says the best thing to draw up is a timetable to give a bit of structure for the family homeschooling. And then this lady says, Facebook user, I'm a teacher, works independently of mainstream and support a lot of homeschooled children. Over the years they benefit. Children can be homeschooled so long as you show that they are getting an alternative education. I think it is about 10 hours per week. It is. Yeah, so shoot away. Let me get this off the screen for you.
I wanted to answer, I think Nia had a question about what if a school disagrees with a child being home educated. It's not really up to the school to disagree unless it's a safeguarding issue. As far as I'm aware, if you've got, I guess it depends, if they have a disagreement, then I'm sure you should be able to have people that can back you up in your decision, so long as there isn't no kind of weird, disputes or like a tangible reason. So they can't have a reason whether they can't argue with you, a parent, home educating their children. Their children have all kinds of reasons. They might have had a negative experience, or a parent might just decide, what, they're doing fine in school, I still want to home educate my child. So whatever the reason may be, a teacher doesn't really have the right, or a school doesn't really have the right to disagree. They can disagree all they like, unless it's a safeguarding issue, in my opinion.
I mean, the reason why I keep on bringing this up because it needs to be discussed. Because, like I said, I get a lot of parents come to me wanting information regarding and a few of them actually complain that they're not getting support their children, and they've got the educational welfare officers banging down the door, and then they've got social workers banging down the door, and in some cases they refuse to let them in. I thought, well, if, why are you not letting them in? Have you got something to hide? If they come into you in the first place, it means they've got an issue to deal with. So just let them in and discuss them. Because when we don't let them in, it's going to escalate. And 2 parents have had their children taken away because they refuse to let them in.
Well, this is why it's important that, as you said, we be a part of networks and groups. There's loads of them on Facebook. There aren't necessarily many Black or people of color groups, but there are them out there. I live in Kent. There's a wide network, Home Ed Network in Kent on Facebook, and there's little pockets of groups and stuff. So as long as you don't stay completely isolated, and people kind of vouch for you in your Home Ed community, in your local area, then that's always a good thing. You are within your right to not allow people into your home with regards to welfare officers, etc. Annually, the local authority would want to meet with a Home Ed family once a year, as I said, annually. But they will try and suggest to meet you in your home, but you don't have to. You can meet them in a local library, you can meet them in a park or a coffee shop. But that's something to definitely research before you start home educating, to find out what your rights are within your local area, and all the information should be there. But they're not allowed to just step into a home just like that. You have every right to disagree or turn that away, and ask them to meet with you at another time, a time when you are comfortable, or prearranged time. Having something to hide, I think, is intrusive for someone to step into your home that way, because you wouldn't step into a teacher's home. And there's many stories I hear about some teachers, what they do in their private time and their parents do. To be fair, I don't mean to dig or say anything there anymore, but I'm just saying people are people and everybody has their stuff. So I think it's a bit intrusive. In fact, a lot intrusive.
Selena, you were going to say something.
You see, I have to remember myself sometimes, because I have to remember myself sometimes, because when they used to come and check up on my son, I'd be out there, I'd open the door, my son would be playing his violin. I'd have the book out of, us going with Black History Studies to Egypt. I'd show them our Egypt project. I'd be showing them his artwork, because I ain't got no problem, because when I understood for myself, as the person I am, that I was going to home educate my child, I did a lot of research. I looked at the curriculum. I modeled what I did off the curriculum. So when they were coming to chat to me, this is what it lines up with what you're doing. And he knows about himself. I started my son off from his family tree. So when we're going through it, he's like, "Oh, Mom, isn't that the time when my granddad would X, Y, and Z?" And then he bring that in. That's how I taught my child. But nobody else does it how I do it. And that's why I teach it in the way that I teach it, because that's how I understand it. So when my child goes into the schooling system and they're teaching them about the Greeks, he comes in dressed as, Amen-Ra, to teach them that, your Greeks were coming over to Kemet to come and learn. And I think a lot of the issues around when we're using terms like Egypt and Kemet, the Egyptians looked, lighter melanated. They were lighter melanated. So they were able to
focus on the visit. Focus on the visits.
I am. But what I'm saying is, when you're staunch about education and we're being bordered in by infrastructure that's been put in place around safeguarding for your children, look at their models, present their models to them with your educational framework. So when they're coming to you, don't be afraid. Even if your child isn't doing any writing, well, they should be writing. But if they're not doing any writing that, they may consider, you set a project that allows that for them to be able to see some of the elements that they want to see. That's all it is. And some of the elements they want to see, it's not hard to do. It's a part of what we'd be teaching them anyway. So.
Can I just say that them turning up on your doorstep randomly, it's not about seeing, from what I hear, from the stories I hear from families, it's just about to make sure your children are safe and all that kind of stuff. And there are better ways of going about instead of intimidating your children. There's some people who are comfortable with doing that. There's some families who are doing amazing works and they still would not want to have that intrusion inside their home. And I'd just like to put on, just put a spin on it and just think, for example, how often are parents allowed to just walk into a school at any time to see what their children are doing and how their children are being. They try to say that they will do that, but the reality is very different. And I want to remind people that, I understand that we all have varying levels of understanding in terms of how we parent our children. And some people might argue some parents aren't necessarily the most, the best example parents. That's not for me to have that judgment on others. But at the same time, it's like, you are your child's parent. You gave birth to your child. You taught your child how to talk. You taught your child how to walk. You taught your child what they know before they enter school, and perhaps other things outside of school. So I in my mind, okay, to come and step into your private space, your home space, is to put that kind of intimidation on families. I think it's really unfair, and especially for newbies to home education. So again, it's just a case of knowing your rights, standing by them, not being disrespectful to whoever may enter your doorstep, and not acting like you've got something to hide. Be very confident, and like
that's important.
And should anything like that happen, there are numbers. I think contact education. Otherwise, there are people out there that you can contact, or if you can contact me, if you have access to my number or my details, there's other people in the community you can contact. There's loads of Facebook groups that you can get in touch with, and you can get in touch with Cheryl Phoenix to ask that right there and then if there's something happening, to help you talk through that process. But I don't agree with them just turn up on your doorstep unannounced, unless of course it's a safeguarding issue, and they have to prove that it's a safeguarding issue for them to do that.
Absolutely. I'll just add to all of that. Go on, Naya.
I'm just going to say, I mean, in your experience, or the people that you know, or anybody, how often do they actually turn up unannounced? Because most people I know, it's an organised visit. They've emailed, they've phoned, and they've actually taken the time to come around. So I haven't heard of unannounced visits. It must be an extreme case for that to happen.
That's what I thought. I mean, I've heard, I don't know anyone personally. I've heard, through WhatsApp groups and stuff, I've seen situations happening, and I later find out or hear or they speak to me that there's been an ongoing issue. So those would be, I think, more isolated circumstances. So it's not really anything I think people have to worry about, unless there's a history of certain behaviours that the school has previously noted. Do you know what I mean, beforehand? But most, like as you say, Neil, most of the meetings are the arrangement beforehand.
Yeah, my advice is to communicate with the authorities. Always communicate with them in writing, so you've got a paper trail, and just be open with them. Because once you start shutting down and say you're not coming, they're going to flag up suspicion, and then they'll be in your face. And quite frankly, if you're home education, you've got nothing to hide.
Well, this is it, and that's why it's important as well. There's other more neutral grounds that you can meet on. For example, like I said, the park or a library. You know what I mean? And all they want to do is see. I mean, I remember when I would see local authority. I remember early stages of being local authority. I used to come with a big, A4 philo of all the work that I had, all the pictures of all the places we've been, all the books that we're reading. And they used to say to me, "But can you make your child read things her own age because you're making her do work that's too advanced?" It was that kind of conversation I was having. So it's like, but then every council, every borough has different local authority type people.
Okay, Selena, a quick point before you jump in. The reason why I'm bringing this up is there was a case of some European children who are home educated and they needed starved to death.
So
you remember this case? And this is why it came up, and this is why often we're thinking about going into homes, because these young children were being started at their home, who were being home educated, which is why I'm flagging this up to let people understand.
Right. Yeah, and I hear that, but I'd like to assume that in that particular case, there was a previous history of that. Just what I mean, they were known to the local authorities already. So that's
and they refused access, which flags up.
Of course, but then my argument would be on that basis, and for any other family, is if there's not an issue of if there's not safeguarding issues, or there's not a history recorded, then that's a whole different thing compared to a family that doesn't have a history of safeguarding issues, doesn't have a history of social workers or anybody involved. The local authority shouldn't just turn up on your doorstep and just to see what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? So it's a
they'll communicate first.
Situation and the circumstance, and people have to be honest about themselves and their circumstance and what they're getting involved in. And that's why it's important an imperative, should I say, to do your studies and do your research and be honest with yourself about your abilities and what your plans for your family.
What I was going to say is, you know, one rule doesn't apply to all in different boroughs, in different counties, in different countries. And the reason why I said that, when I made that choice, I did my research. Again, there are a lot of parents who are making choices out of desperation, and there are many parents making choices, you know, that it's their last resort. But the one thing that I would say is that anything you're prepared to take on responsibly for yourself, you have to be accountable for every single action that will come on towards you. So if you're doing something, and again, this is not being defeatist, this is not allowing you to, you know, be bullied, but when you are being that person who is taking 100% responsibility, and you've never taken 100% responsibility before, you have to understand that the significance behind the choices that you make or that you don't make lie with you. So when you have government bodies coming to your door, you're that person they're coming to. And again, it's about having that open conversation and having that open communication to ensure whatever they're asking for of you, you are able to provide that. Whether or not they're satisfied or not, that's not your problem. The problem here is if they are trying to ensure that safeguarding, because that's a key word everywhere, that safeguarding isn't an issue, that you provide them with the information they need to make sure that they are content that safeguarding isn't an issue. Because same way with your council tax, you're not paying that council tax, they're coming to take it out. The way they're coming to do all the rest of those things. So be accountable, whether or not, you know, you got to pay monthly or whatever it is, but be accountable for the things that you're taking full responsibility for, and just keep learning, keeping yourself updated with the new processes, because they change every second. We don't know any of the new laws that are coming into place unless we're actively on board, and we find ourselves getting sectioned because we know less and less, and we're doing things of our own mind, but we are encroached by the system at hand and how they've chosen to do things and how they're telling us to do things. So just be very mindful that as free as you are, we're free in a system that continues to trap us and our children. And then when we're looking at the social issues that we deal with as a race, we also have to take that into consideration. So just be very mindful of how you're agitating certain things to be able to then put you at risk, you and your families at risk, to lose your children and to lose your freedoms.
Sorry, Selena, did you say that if the local authorities are not happy, it's not our problem?
No, what I'm saying is, if they've asked you for certain information, you know, like just like they said with Debbie, her daughter's reading at a higher level, that's not your problem. But the fact that your daughter's reading, she meets all the criteria for the levels that they say she should be at. If she's further than that, that's not their problem. That's not your problem. That's just an observation.
Yeah, just clarify.
That's just an observation for them. If your child is under, that's very different. But then under, what does that mean? What does that look like? And if you're showing them that, you know, this is your child's development, this is where they were 3 months ago, where they are now, as long as you're able to give more understanding, even for yourself, to be able to see how your children are progressing in how you understand progress. Because everybody wants to see some measure. You know, if you got 12% on your last week, we want to see that, you know, we put things in place. So you've got 15% this week, and seeing that what the methods that we're putting in place, they are working. So it's just about, you know, the actionable plans, actionable tables that you can deliver for yourself, that you can make sense of to other people.
Absolutely. We absolutely do need a full-time organisation dealing with African heritage homeschooling. Absolutely need a full-time person on this, and we need to pay for that person ourselves.
Again, we have to invest in those who are specialised to do this. We have to invest in them. So.
And I want to add as well, anyone that's home educating, they need to make sure they're keeping a document of all of their work that they're doing, regardless of whether they have a curriculum or not, but definitely keep a log of everything they're doing. So should that happen, then without having someone, you know, be intrusive in your space, you can come to the door and say, look, this is what I've been doing with my children. So you know, that's always a good to back yourselves up.
Absolutely. And even just to add on that, with regards to them coming to see you, as has been said, just to clarify, parents, they have to write to you and let you know that they want to come. However, lawfully, you do not have to give them access, and they have no legal right to come to your home either. So that is one thing. The thing is, sometimes it's like pick your battles, because as much as we don't want them in our lives and in our business, because we've chosen to take the full responsibility for our children, the law, they've been trying to charge parents for the last God knows how long to home educate for anywhere from £1,500 a year. Luckily, within the European community, there's a lot of active parents. If we relied on our community, that charge already. However, there's a lot of active parents out there who are battling constantly with the government, saying that they're not going to pay, because as Nia did say earlier, the majority, obviously we are in a European country, so the majority of people that are home educating are Europeans, and they're not looking to pay, and a lot of them are very middle to upper class wealthy as well. So it's not like there's a problem. It's just a fact that who are you to charge me to take care of my own children? So there is that side as well. You've also got, as Selena has pointed out, the safeguarding side, where there is sometimes abusive things going on in the household. So we actually, you know, it's having that balance as well. And just because we are of hue doesn't mean to say that we're doing everything correctly, because I've come into contact with quite a few parents who weren't feeding their children all day, every day, who were locking their kitchen doors and their fridge, who didn't have heating in their house or running water, who didn't have lights in the house, and they were raising children. So that's a clear safeguarding problem. And the fact is, they wanted me to represent them. And I said, hell no, I can't represent you, because it goes against everything I stand for, and it is abusive. So I understand, as much as I don't like the system, I understand that sometimes there is a place for the system, whether we like it or not, because we have to think about the safeguarding of the children that we are looking after, and those that end up in the care system, or those that, you know, there's such a tangled web. A lot of the time, if you know you have nothing to hide necessarily, as Debbie has said as well, they can write to you, you can meet them somewhere else, bring some of the work that you're doing. As Selena said, it doesn't have to be just about basic academics. It could be creative stuff. It could be that your son or daughter's an actor, actress, singer, dancer, because some of the home ed families I know, their children are in some of the major plays in the UK, traveling around the country. You know, they're doing big things. A lot of them are doing professional football. You know, some of them are doing STEM subjects. So there's a lot there. It's not just about passing exams, writing, and, you know, hopefully getting a job, because do you know what, we're in the age of technology now. There's going to be no jobs for our children, so we need to be training and educating our children to create their own jobs, because it seems like every other nationality has come here and jumped over us leaps and bounds, and we're still looking for jobs. When I drive and I look at people that the builder, what they did hire in the builder from wherever, but then they trained their kids and they trained each other and started their own building company so that they can service the needs of their community. And even for me to try and get my kitchen done, which finally got done, it was like, I think I was searching for 6 months, being ripped off, this, that, and the other. But where is our community? And that's what we need to be teaching our children towards, you know, making sure that we're building for them. We've got Joshua Beckford right now. He's an academic. He's in Oxford University. He's 11 years old. He might be 12 by now, actually. Do you understand? So it goes. How old is he now?
He's 15 now. Get big man now.
15. Oh my! See that? I just keep seeing him as so tiny, and he's, you know, he's your academic type. But not, like it's been said, not everyone is an academic. We have to really, really explore.
He's building his own school in Nigeria.
I'm not surprised. I'm just not surprised. You know, and sorry, hold on, let me go to the messages on the right. Give me a second, guys. Where do we go? Fantastic discussion. Timetable, we said that. Someone, Facebook user says, I agree with Nia. As we live in the system, they do have a duty to make sure that children are being educated. But the best thing to do is to have a frank discussion with them, to let them know you are about to home educate your child and demonstrate how you intend to do it. They do ask you, if you deregister your child from school, they do ask you to send them a timetable of something of what you're going to do. Another Facebook user has said they cannot argue against you doing so if you demonstrate that you know what you're doing. A lot of parents don't know what they're doing. It's literally one of those ones where you learn on the job, just like being a parent. Can anyone recommend... Sorry?
that's not good enough for the child. You know, while you're learning, they're missing out on certain things. So, like Selena was saying, do your research first. That's the best way. So, like I say, when you leave with the agreement of school, if it's down to the school, they can give you resources from the school. If they're a really progressive school, they're willing to help. You can get resources from the school. So do ask. If all they can do is say no. You can get resources from the school. Also, you can get resources from supplementary schools as well.
Well, the fact is, we're in the age of technology. First of all, when you're a home educator, you don't have to follow the national curriculum. That's the first thing that parents need to understand. You don't have to follow what they're doing in the school system. Secondly, everything is available at your fingertips. You go online, you've got so many. I've got a little WhatsApp group. It's like about 70. I don't even know how many parents in there. And when I fill in like information, 99% of the information is online. Besides the worksheets, which you can download and print, 99% of the resources, the schools, this, that, and the other. I know Brother Andrew Mohammed in, where is he? In Manchester. Birmingham. They've got online homeschool. We've got some coming up in a bit if everyone's online. We've got 2 people that also do online homeschools as well, who are going to be on in the second part of this discussion as well, and going into a bit more information about that. Someone has asked, Zoe Smith says, can anyone recommend groups to meet up with other black home educating unschooling families around London? I'm new to this, but the vibe in general, homeschool groups, is a bit meh. I get that. And sometimes it is. Well, that's the point in being in the groups, is that you actually speak with them about what they're doing and where they're going. Facebook user 306 says, I agree with Debbie, that is your child. Facebook user says, agree with Cheryl about us being self-sufficient and creating our own jobs. And another Facebook user says, there is a lot of home ed material online. Yes, definitely echoing the same thing I said. Manaya, you were going to say something, or was it you, Selena? I saw waving.
Me. Well, I'm going to say something that people might not like, but when it comes to home educating and wanting, well, you know, Black Poppy Rose exists because, you know, people don't like what we're doing, what we're saying. But when it comes to home educating, she's on silent. When it comes to home educating, and when it comes to doing something that you have understood for yourself, it's difficult to find somebody who's prepared to take the responsibility of the community on board. Because when we had the PLC group in place that had been in place for 10 years, it's not an easy task to take on board the race, to take on board parents who don't know what they're doing, to be there full time as well as be there for your children. And there's a lack of discipline that we have that we're not prepared to address. There's a lack of discipline we have as Black people or African people, or whatever terms we say we shouldn't be using, we should be using. And the concepts that we have as individuals, we're not prepared to put aside, to come with a common ground, to be able to work together as a community with our children. And I'm not saying that we're not working on it, and I'm not saying that, you know, we're not trying to improve, but the realities that I'm faced with, especially with the work I do and the communities, our communities that I see around the world, is that nobody's prepared to take accountability for themselves and their concepts of where they are at the time. And you look to a leader criticizing, you look to a leader having an unrealistic expectations that you don't even have of yourselves, that you put onto us, especially as women. I can't discount the men because I am a woman, so I know what responsibilities people put on me, being that strong Black woman that you know can never break, that is supposed to endure and continue to endure the sufforations that we suffer with, and still manage my own mental health. And when we're looking at homeschooling and education, that's something that I don't feel that we truly understand. So when we want to create something, if that's what we're moving, because I'm very solution driven, come with your baggage and leave them at the door. Come with an open mind about how you understand and represent yourself, and be open to explore what somebody you have come to is bringing to the table. And rather than spend your time criticizing or, you know, well, I don't agree, all the rest of it, come with your own solutions if that's the problem. It's never a problem. We will take your ideas. We will do all of those things, but come with that you're prepared to lead. Don't be throwing your ideas to the leader and say, you know, you do it now, and I'll watch you, and I'll watch you do it along the way. And that's what our community That's what we do, whether you choose to acknowledge that or not. That's what we do in our community. And then so as a result, we no longer have the people of color's home education group, and I think that's a travesty. However, has anybody decided to take up the mantle who has been a part of that, who has seen what has happened? No, because the responsibility is one that is great. When we look at our leaders through history, and we all educate ourselves on our leaders, but do we understand what it takes to be a leader of a movement where you are responsible for the mental well-being of your community on every angle? So when you're looking at, wanting somebody to take lead for a homeschooling environment, how prepared are you to take lead of that narrative for yourself, from yourself, to be a part of a collective where you're coming together to formulate actual ideas to be able to develop of our children?
I've tried that since 2012.
Sorry?
They have forums for African heritage home educators at the National Black Supplementary Schools Week. None of them turned up. Did it 2 years in a row. They asked me to do it. And Cheryl, do you remember I used to do the National Black Supplementary Schools Week?
Yes, I remember.
2012, I had 65 events in 1 week. On the Olympics, had more. And the only reason why I did the National Black Supplementary Schools Week is because the home educators asked me to do it. Asked me to do something for the kids in the summer. They didn't turn up.
For me, it's very much about how responsible are you prepared to be? What you're asking for, is it truly what you're asking for? Because there are many of us out there who are doing the work that you're asking for, but where are you?
I've created a website.
It's Europeans coming to most of us for the work. It's Europeans who want the information. So where are you? You say you want this. You say you need this, but you haven't truly understood what it is you actually need, because we're out there doing the work that you're asking for. And I guess it's not all in one place, because that's impossible for it to be. However, we've all been creating platforms where you're able to get a multifaceted angle of the research and the resources that you're looking for, because we haven't given up. We're still doing the work. And when you're ready, we're here. But nobody's going to lead it for you. You have to pull your resources and pull all the things in together and work out where your value is coming from what it is you're asking for, and invest in those who are investing in you.
I mean, there was a home education group for African heritage people in the UK. It got shut down because the people in charge didn't want to do it anymore. And then it's not necessary to shut it down. At least let somebody else take it over. So what, do I have to create another one? And it has to be specific about UK home education, because there's a lot of African heritage people in America who home educate, and they just swamp the place. We have to have it dedicated to UK home educators. But you know what? If you do it, I'll do it.
See, this is the thing. I think it's a bit difficult to compare us to America, because as much as America is like a massive place with a hell of a lot more Black people than there are here, and they've been through a different type of struggle, although they're very similar but different on many different layers, on different levels. I think the issue that we have with Black people as a whole, we're a lot more harder on ourselves than they are on anybody else, for whatever reason that may be. Conditioning, African Holocaust stuff dating back from how far back, and it's all making itself more prevalent, especially in these kinds of works that we're doing in the community. I also think that as a people, we got to learn to be mindfulness, have gratitude and respect for the people that are doing the things that they're doing. And also emotional intelligence is something that we lack in our community. And once we're able to master, at least study or be on the verge of researching and studying those things for ourselves, I think that will make a huge difference into what we're trying to achieve now. But it is very difficult. And I agree with Selena, everything Selena said in terms of where we're at and what happened with regards to the POC Home Ed group, because that was a phenomenal group. And the people that were leading that were doing a phenomenal job. And I think it comes to a case of where we respect each other and having gratitude and appreciation for the time that these people put in. Like, these people aren't getting paid to do this. And people rely on it so heavily. And since that group has gone, people are feeling the brunt of that not being there no more, because that was the core nucleus of the Black people of color, whatever you want to call it, home ed community UK wide, and there's nothing been able, no disrespect to the other groups that are out there, but there's nothing that's been able to compare to it. So it's just unfortunate we don't know what we have until it's gone,
Cheryl, how much time we got left?
We've got half an hour.
Focus on the way forward, focus on the more positive things, way forward.
Exactly. That was going to be the next point, but let me just read out some of these comments. Yeah. Hold on, let me go back. Very true, Selena. That was from Kemet Black. Explore and Learn also was from Kemet Black. That's if someone's looking for online resources. Zoe Smith says, I'm looking more for a dating app for Black homemade families rather than a leadership type setting. Zoe, cool. Sankofa was just given some power fist, and she says, rise up the panel. Thank you. So yes, as Naya said, what does the future look like for us as a community and parents with regards to the homeschool journey? How can we, you look at them kittens, how can we be more collective? Let me start with that as one of the things, even going off what all of you have said. One of the things is we had the People of Colour's homemade group. There's a load of homemade groups, particularly like I said, quite American focused, but still have a lot of good resources. And then the ones that I find are in the UK, you've got like 85,000 Europeans in a particular group for homemade. I started an online one because of a lot of parents, but I'm not a homemaker, so I can only just post resources. I'm not coming out on day trips unless I've got the kids with me, like here. I'm coming out on the day trips, you know what I mean? So things like that, it's a place and a space for parents to interact. But what I find a lot of the time, did you drop the kitten? No. What I find a lot of the time is that they wait for someone, as Selena says, they just wait for someone to do. And this is a lot of my frustration, is that as a community, we don't just do. However, I also understand not everybody has a leadership mentality. So I get that as well. But if someone is presenting you with something, then you need to take it and run. Those are my favorite clients who I say do 1, 2, 3, ABC. They do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ABCDE, and they run and then they learn on the job. My thing is, all of the things that you're doing, Brother Naya, that Debbie's doing, that you're doing, Selena, costs money. To set up a homemade website, to set up a homemade network, all of these things, we have money in our community. We spend billions every year on wigs and weaves, on whatever foolishness that we need to, but yet we're failing to actually have our own schools. We're failing to basically invest in ourselves as a community. As I gave the analogy earlier, when I was looking for a builder, I've been through a few people in our and I had to go, and in the end I used someone in our community, just so you know, Richard Niella, if anyone wants a builder, he's based down in Northwest but can travel, and he done a directory. And yeah, I know the directory, like there's a load of directories out there, which is great, but the fact is that we do, yeah, there's a few out there now since I did UK Black Links back in the day. And, you know, off the back, and this is the thing when I talk about the money side of things, off the back of the UK Black Links Business Directory, we had no less than 25 staff members. Why? Because all of them were black, and we made sure we saw the power in finding these black businesses. And you have to pay to go in the directory. You know, everything we seem to have or want we seem to think is free. So as I've seen with a lot of organizations, and we've all seen with a lot of groups, we start up with so much energy and enthusiasm to provide a service, and then we get burnt out because as much as people see the service, they either one, don't use it, expect you to keep running on empty and don't want to fund it. I remember when I set up my GoFundMe for the Black Child Agenda, I can't remember when it was, like some 5 years ago. I was trying to raise £5,000. Oh no, I still don't raise it. And I forgot about it until someone said to me when the sacrifice of George Floyd took place, and they said, oh, do you have a GoFundMe? And this wasn't my community, this was the European community coming to me and asking how they can fund the movement that I'm doing because they see the importance of it. Anytime I find our community see the importance of it, yes, baby, it's very true, right? The only time our community see the importance of some of our things sometimes, it's not across the board, and this is not me disrespecting, but the truth needs to be discussed and it needs to be talked about, and we need to all look at self, is when we need it. When I need something for Black history, oh, then I'll go to Black Poppy Road or Black History Studies. When I need to have such and such, it's only when it's a need, but that should be something where £5 a month, £1 a week, whatever it is, needs to be put and dropped into a pot that each group and organisation should be able to say, right, I need £500 or I need £1,000, and be able to draw down off that. Because every other community seems to manage that and be able to actually build businesses and build enterprise and build industries, but we're still scrapping over certain things. I'll go in order. Let me start with Debbie, Selena, then Naya. Give me your thoughts on what you think. We've got 20 minutes.
What were my thoughts on what? Sorry, what you just said?
With regards to how we move forward, collective economics, home ed or we just throw the whole lot in the bin and leave the country.
I think the last one. We need to really start in ourselves and our communities, and we are. I mean, with the emergence of Black Pound Day, I mean, what a phenomenal campaign that a lot of highlighted the Black Pound, I suppose, and how we get into group economics and build up our own community, particularly the business, and invest in them. I say invest, not support, because I feel like support is like a charity kind of thing. We have to be mindful about the legacies that we're leaving behind for future generations, because we might not find a need for it, but our grandchildren surely might. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a case of affordability, or not necessarily affordability, but what we value. And that's something we need to take a reflection on. I think have a rethink about it, because people will pay £150 for a pair of trainers, but might not necessarily pay £1 a month for supporting an organisation that helps the community. Whether you have children or not, this is something we should be reflecting on and looking at. But that's not me being judgmental. It's just an observation. That's what I'm saying. And definitely with the home education is the way forward. I like to think of home education as not necessarily, I say in quotes, like the extreme version where you completely take your children out. There's people that have their children in school and they're still home educating their children.
You look at Lisa Fruit.
Looking at how we view things, and also to look at other ways of developing, financial education, financial literacy is definitely and things to explore and include in our curriculum, whether we full-time home educate our children or not. But we as a community, we really need to be thinking about how we're investing back into our community and supporting the ones who are out there already doing the work.
Selena.
What I tell everybody, it's important to a level that you can't even understand, right? See your names, understanding. It's my mum. When you see?
Yeah.
When we lose this, we lose ourselves, and we are that last writing generation before everything becomes technological, and then the spiritual disparity that we're going to start having as a community, that we are already losing aspects of our culture that we can't make sense of for the things that we do now. And then in the next 20 years, how much of our culture are we continuously having to dilute to fit into somebody else's narrative? My way forward, my understanding of what we can start doing is really and truly stop. Take a look at yourself. Where have you come from? Doesn't matter whether or not you've got white great-great-grandparents. Doesn't matter if you've got Asian great-great-grandparents. It doesn't matter the cosmopolitan background of your ancestors. The idea is to understand what has made you up. What journey have the people before you gone on for you to exist and continue to create life? What was the reason behind that? Why? What did they sustain? What are you sustaining? Share your story. Share your lives with your children. Share your lives with the people around you. Get that understanding of what you're fighting for. What are we here for? What is that purpose? Is it to work 9 to 5? Is it to send your children to school, 8 to 2:15? Well, I didn't go to school till like 2:15, so that was an issue for me. Is it for them to then, get their university degree to continue to go and work in an environment that is to make them feel less than? What is the purpose? What is the reason? And I think that taking that time to understand that and being committed to your understanding of life is where we start from, because that's when you'll enjoy education. That's when you will enjoy learning, because it matters to you. It means something to you, and you're able to tangibly see and document your lifetime, because all the people we're learning about, somebody had to be bothered to document their lives, and we have to believe their words for it. We have to believe what they're saying is what happened, because we don't have any other means to be able to do that. And the same with our legacies. Who's documenting our story? Who's going to document Debbie and Black British parents so that we know how it came about, what it came about for, and the reason why people are impacted about it in the future? Who's documenting Brother Nia to find out the same things, the same aspects? Who's documenting Cheryl about what Cheryl's doing, so that we in the future know that what are the things that we're missing? Because the same things we're doing now, our ancestors were doing 30 years ago. None of us ain't doing nothing new. And 30 years before that. But then what people don't understand is that when we had emancipation, so when we recently celebrated emancipation, 1833, what we forget to understand is when those slave masters sent us away from their plantations, where did we have to go back to get jobs? Did we have 10 years to rest and say, oh, yes, you know, we've gone through that. We have to rest. Never rest as a race. We've never had the opportunity to think about what do we need, because everything was already in place. We had to now go back into an infrastructure that we had built that now was telling us how we're supposed to now live in these conditions. We didn't start the money system. We didn't start the law system. We didn't start the law enforcement, education. All of these things we have filtered into as time has gone on. So I would advise us to really take time with ourselves as a race, because we've not had the time. Jamaica was only 58 years old. Yeah, one of the first, besides Haiti, the first British colony in the West Indies to be independent. It takes 100 years to create change. No, we don't get caught up in that, Brother Nia. It's 58 independence. It's on their paper. It doesn't matter what level of independence they're telling us
the
that
Queen
it is.
still owns the land.
Yeah, but that's my point again. But we still celebrate independence. And again, the idea is that we've never had an opportunity to do for ourselves in the way that we understand doing for ourselves. So when we get to that understanding, we will be easier on ourselves, that we've not had the chance to rest or to say, this is what we need, this is what we can build and put in place, because the infrastructure we have to go right back into to make sure we can provide for our children. And that's all we've been doing for generations, ensuring that the children that we give birth to and we give life to have opportunity in a world that we have brought them forward to. All of our children are gifts, but the world that we created them into has told us that we don't belong here, and we continue to put ourselves in it and to feed ourselves in it and wonder why we're dealing with such angst and anxiety. So what I would implore is learn about you, understand you and your journey, understand the histories that connect with you, because then when you look at the world, you see it for what it is. You see the damages that's being caused and the ignorance and the lackings and all the rest of it. But once you know what you need to know for yourself, the learning becomes easier. And the timetable, and when you start put that timetable in, we're going to wake up at 8 till 12, all the rest of it, you will find a timetable that works for you. You don't have to be so rigid and say on Monday, Tuesday, and that rigid kind of mentality that we're forced into, this 9 to 5 rigid mentality that came from workers working in factories and the children having to work in those factory times, so they weren't at home dying and infanticide and getting lost and getting kidnapped and all the rest of that. There's a structure in place the structure's been put in place for a reason. And when you learn more about the world, learn more about even this country and the acts and the laws, you start to understand why it is framed that way. So then you can be easier on yourself for not knowing and stop punishing yourself. So the way forward, stop punishing ourselves for things we don't know. Take time with yourselves to start unraveling what you have been told that doesn't make sense to you, and find a truth that works within your understanding of who and what you are and where you are and what you stand for.
Beautiful. For the way forward for African heritage home education, we have to set up, support and maintain our own organization. Now, I'm the number one person who's always saying, stop setting up new organizations, support what already exists. But we don't have one that already, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, do we have a home education dedicated to African heritage people, an organization in this country?
Not since POC, no, not the same.
Right. The POC was only on Facebook. So like I said, I've got the website there. The domain name is gone. but we have to create our own organization in this country dedicated to African heritage home education. And ideally, we need to pay a single person, at least one person, to run that organization. Pay them with our own money. If we get funding, fine, we get the funding. We don't rely on funding. And our black businesses need to support our organizations. They was flashing their money with holidays in their big fancy cars. Fair enough, you work hard for your money, but you need to support our grassroots organizations. So our black businesses need to sponsor our organization. So let a black business come in and sponsor an organization for home educators. So we need a website. We need to have like a year-long timetable of workshops. Because when I was in the People of Color Facebook group, and I used to bring people in there. People say to me, Brother Nia, is there a space for African heritage home educators? I said, look, come to this Facebook page. When they got in there, they said, look, nothing's happening. So I said to them, listen, just go on the page and say, listen, I'm taking my children swimming. I'm going mountain climbing on this time and this date, and see who wants to come along. Just put it up there and see what happens. She puts it up there and nothing. That's like we said, like Cheryl was saying, just somebody set a time, set a date, and just go with it, and people wouldn't turn up. So let's organize a year-long curriculum, a year-long workshop that parents could just say, listen, on this time and this date, I'm going to take my child to this event with other black home educators. It has to be organized on that way. It needs somebody full-time to do that. We must get into the habit of paying our people to run our organizations. Can't be dealing with all this freeness business and volunteering. Pay our own people. And a lot of our young people are out of work. Let's employ our young people. Because they're having to run to racist organizations and racist people to go and get jobs. We're complaining about high levels of unemployment. Employ our own people. And then on technology, we have to evolve with technology. Our children are going to come to technology whether we like it or not. Some of our parents didn't like the DHS videos. You know, you didn't like PlayStation, didn't like mobile phones when they first came out. We're going to use them. Like Marcus Garvey says, whoever controls technology is going to control the world. And the thing is, though, we as African people, we are at the forefront of most of the technology that we use. So as a home education, we have to evolve with the technology with our children. That's me done.
No, it's fine. There's been a few more comments. Hold on, let me go up. Wait, before I get to you, Pauline. Oh, right, hold on. Ooh, there's actually quite a lot. Right, Royston Dawswell says, tell me how much should be dropped in a pot, weekly or monthly. Then he says, okay, Longting, not interested in talking. Somebody give me bank details to set up a monthly direct debit. We feel your sentiments, Royston, and it's something I'm going to move on to. Pauline says, how can I get hold of your book, Selena? And then what I'm going to do as well is in the comments section, I'm going to actually, guys, in the private chat, put all your website addresses, emails, whatever, and ats and Twitter feeds and whatever, and I'll copy and paste that so that everyone can get it as well, whether they're on Facebook or on the YouTube. Then we've got Jennifer Douglas says, this is fantastic. I've been thirsty for this. There is lots of background noise. A child struggling to hear Debbie. Is that you, Lee? Was that you making all the noise? Yes, me. She's eating light cheese. I told her she can't have no more. Kemet Black says, well said, Selena. And then Facebook user says, apologies, but I've joined late and been in and out of the discussion. My question is, do you think the main issue is about empowering the parents with knowledge of self, as many parents seem disempowered in their role as parents on a basic level? Hold on, I'll let you lot get, because we've got 10 minutes or just under. Oh gosh, hold on, let me go up. All right, Uno, you're just typing too fast. Give me a second. Basic level. And then Facebook user says, big up grandbaby in the background with Glamour Cheryl Phoenix. Thank you. She just woke up, so now all hell's going to break loose. Love the vision, brother. The supplementary schools could feed into it, I believe that's supposed to say, and that's from Jennifer Douglas. Kemet Black also says, and what would the homeschooling organization look like, and where will it be housed? We don't own no space. And then says,
Online.
excellent panel discussion, refreshing to hear fair and competent analysis and solutions. Abigail Etim Reed has put in her email, info@abigailreedwriter.com. Oops, could feed into it, not into it. Yes, but I definitely got that, Jennifer. So, guys who are watching, I'm going to post all of their links so you know how to contact everyone directly, because they all do amazing work in our community. Before we leave, guys, who's that? Yvonne Williams. Oh gosh, hold on. My thing is so. Oh, Yvonne Williams has sent her email. Brill conference. We all found it really useful. Thank you very much, Yvonne. And then a Facebook user says, greetings, brothers and sisters. Just popping in and out. A study deadline. Completely on point. Black Poppy Rose and Brother Nia. We need to stop coming and just come. My sister Bev did just that. Wanted to get together, talk over recent events, George Floyd's, Breonna, COVID-19, mediation, etc. She set up a simple meeting on a local rec. Those who braved the rain have now gone forward, made contact with the local new school in the area, and they are now going forward with the parents for action. And then you said, I don't know why you're coming up as Facebook user. Maybe we're not friends on Facebook on my actual post. That's the only reason. Type your name in so we know who you are. On what I've just said, guys, we've got just over we've got 9 minutes. Let us know websites. Even though I've asked you to post it, website, what you do, and where people can find you. And I'm going to mute my mic because this baby's just chatting.
Well, I do a lot of work with schools, so I help them to diversify their curriculums. I also provide specialized studies and classes for them to learn about Black, African, West Indian, North American, and worldly subjects. Because when you talk about the African, Black, Caribbean, we consolidate them all into one narrative, and it's not right for us to do that. Because if we're looking at over 50 countries in Africa and over 30 islands in the West Indies, that's a big conversation to have, because each one of those regions have different cultures, different understandings. And what we don't do is we don't limit ourselves to the amount of time that we can have to talk about what we need to talk about. So we go into schools and the idea is to diversify their understandings of what they classify as Black and what we classify as Black or African or West Indian or whatever terms we're adding to ourselves that we didn't give ourselves in the first place. So you can find us on blackpoppyrose.org. All social medias is Black Poppy Rose, and we're 10 this year. Without the community, we wouldn't still be here, but in it, 10 years commitment. But we have a campaign called Our Ancestors Served. So although we're leading with Jamaica first, it is not just about Jamaica, but Jamaica is classified, as one of the first British colonies that has, funded the world. So we're using that, and they have the oldest colonial regiment, the West India Regiment. So we have a campaign going out that we're asking our community to support, so we can travel and take our exhibition around the world, so we can come and bring it to wherever you are, so we can showcase, educate, teach, provide the resources that you need to be able to learn more. So we have all of that available, and we do this 365 days a year. It's not just a one-off thing, and we're in constant conversations with different people up and down the country, in Jamaica, Canada, Sierra Leone at the moment, to see how we can expand this narrative and bring more information out. So when other organizations need this information, they can come and get it from us. They don't have to keep doing the same work over and over again. So that's what we're trying to do. And then with the family trees, I do that as well. So I help families to trace their ancestry and create into books just like that. So if you find me, Selena Carty, social media, on Instagram, LinkedIn, then correspond with me that way, and then I'll send all the information to Cheryl so you can find me otherwise.
Debbie?
Yeah, I run Black British Parent. Black British Parent is also 10 years this year. We have been running a Facebook group for 10 years, but our Instagram page is only 2 years, but it's grown so much over the 2 years. The Instagram is more about sharing, I guess. It can be, for those that follow that know about the Instagram page, it can be a bit controversial, it can be a bit triggering for many, but it's just really about exploring the subjects and topics that impact us as individuals and within our community, and things that reflect parenting and family and all those kinds of things. So don't take it personally with the page. Also, we have a website which is blackbridgeparent.co.uk. We're in the process of developing it at the moment, but there's a few things on there, so you can register to be part of our main list and to be updated with new information. I personally, I'm a family and life coach. I'm about empowering families and parents, find their authentic voice, their authentic self, and also to pay attention to empowering and observing children's natural abilities and natural personalities, and how we can develop that, enhance that, and work with that as well as our own. So yeah, I'm all about impact. There's so many things out there for children, and I find that a lot of children are going back home to parents that need help and support too. So our intention is to do that. So it's not really home education based, but it's all about, just parenting in general. But anyone can email me at info@blackbridgeparent.co.uk, and they can email me at Deborah, DEBRA, at blackbridgeparent.co.uk should they want any, direct information.
Brother Nia.
My name is Brother Nia Imara. I'm the founder of the National Association of Black Suffragette Schools, which has been going for 13.5 years now. You can find me on Twitter as Nabs3, Instagram as Nabs3. We've got the National Association of Black Suffragette Schools page and group. You can try and get me on Facebook as Nia Imara, Brutal Truth. I've got a YouTube channel, which is Nabs 2007. There's multiple interviews there with the practitioners of African Heritage Supplement Schools, some of the elders in African Heritage Supplement Schools, and I've filmed some of the numerous events I've done over the years. I've been doing the Nabs Awards for the last 3 years. So I've been awarding the educators in our community, the activists in our community, and also what I'm doing is rewarding some of the students that come and teach. So that's the Coming Back Awards, which I'll probably rename with another name. I do a weekly newsletter every single week, every Thursday morning if I get the energy. But it's every Thursday I do the weekly Nabs newsletter of cultural and educational events that are going on up and down the country. The Black Child Agenda's got a permanent link there. Been there for years. Selena Carty's had a permanent link there for quite a while. So every week, events that are happening in the UK, mostly around London, but you send me some stuff that outside London to build it up a bit. But every week is packed with a whole heap of things that are going on in our community. So I don't hear nobody saying there's nothing going on, because there's plenty going on, and I'm letting you know about it. And the link goes out on all the social medias every week. All right. So I'm like a signposter, because people contacted me about youth crime, about home education, about Saturday schools, about lawyers, and I just signpost everything to everybody. So I just share information. That's the one thing we don't do in our community. We don't share information enough. When there's a gang fight and a shooting, not to share it all over the place. Oh look, someone got shot. But when it's something positive in our community, like a child doing well, going to university, or an organization doing something constructive, you don't want to share it. And I test people on my website, on my Facebook, because you look at my website, my Facebook page, it's constant positive things, and people don't want to like it, don't want to share it, don't make a comment. So I thought, let me test these people, because my Facebook is like 5,000 friends and 5,400 followers. So I thought, you must be seeing something on my page. So I thought, let me put up something controversial, like stabbing in Tottenham, whatever. Pack up with comments, 60 comments, and yeah, let's get something done. So I put something about black mental health, black education, and then it goes quiet again. Get out of this mentality of only sharing negative news. Can't be blaming slavery for that. It's us. Get into the habit of sharing positive news in our community, because it far outweighs the negative. Now get into that habit, and we'll move forward as a people. Kill the conversation.
Hi, sorry, I muted the mic because the baby's having a full conversation with herself and filling her face with fruits. So let me look, because there's been more comments as you guys have been speaking. Still send your links in the chat so I can share it. Naheda Sankopa says pick up the panel. Facebook user's name, she said it's Sheila Freeman. Jennifer Douglas says, Selena, do you offer one-to-one? And who else is this? And Nahanda Sankopa says, grandbaby has lots to contribute as well. Yes, she does. She's clapped off all her fruits. So they can find you either. Did you not send your things into the private group?
Yeah.
Into our private chat. Can you see it on the right hand side? I'm using my laptop, so it's on the right. But even you still send it anyway. Yes.
Google's amazing.
And go. And then Marlene says, here, Bronia. Marlene Goken. So, it is now 4 o'clock and we say thank you. We're going on to our second panel. You guys have been phenomenal, as you've heard from the people in the chat, and they are on YouTube and also on Facebook. So those of you on Facebook and YouTube, don't go anywhere. We have a second panel coming up with Ziggy from More Education. He's actually in Jamaica. It's like, how rude is that?
Well, I'm Ziggy.
And then we've also got Kay Johnson, who is an ex-school teacher of 45 years as well. So please say thank you, guys, to Selena Carty from Black Poppy Rose, Brother Nia Imara from the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, and Debbie Philpello from the Black British Parents. So you can just Google their names, you'll find them all online. Thank you, guys. Greatly appreciated by sharing your honesty. And that's what we wanted. That's why I picked you guys, because I know you guys are real, not another nonsense and sugarcoating the nonsense. So I will see you guys soon. We need to meet up, and just chill, do other stuff. And I'll see you guys soon. Let me bring in our second panel.
Bye. Bye. Bye-bye.
Boom, boom. Are you going? Are you going? Are you there, Kay? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, no, you're on. Good. Hold on. Let me see if I can do anything here. Just that my computer's really slow, Debs. And I'm hungry. Gosh. And the world is listening. Right, there we go. Hey, guys, how are you?
I'm fine.
Morning. Sorry, afternoon.
Yes.
It's 4 o'clock for us here. What time is it there, Ziggy?
10.
Oh, okay, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad.
It's not too bad. So we've just done round one of the discussion around home ed. I know you guys were watching online as well. So that was brilliant. We've had a lot of feedback from, what's this thing called? YouTube and also Facebook. So you guys are our second panel. Waiting for our sister Leah Salmon to jump on, and also I can never remember his name, from the Equestrian Society. So even though you see me looking at my phone, it's only because I'm responding to messages and adding messages online for those that are logged on. So it's not me being rude. So first of all, please just introduce yourselves to the audience.
Okay. Should I go first? Yeah, I'm Kay Johnston.
Of course, ladies first.
Yeah, I am happily retired, but I still work with mostly home-educated children. I fill in the gaps that parents don't feel particularly confident to do. I work 3 days a week with these children. So it's quite intense. And I absolutely love what I do. I'm become a huge advocate of home education. Having been on the other side of the desk for such a long time, I'm absolutely flabbergasted at what I took for granted as the norm. And for me, there's just absolutely no turning back. I just love what I do, working with these children and their parents, and just doing what I know to do. That's it so far. Yeah.
Fire away. So my thing's slow, so just jump in because the baby's there. So I'm just gonna mute my mic.
I just want to say a massive thank you to Kay. Kay allowed me to, after meeting or hearing her story, I gave her a call. And that was actually the beginning of my homeschooling journey. She was kind enough to sit with me in her house, go through the process. I don't think I've seen you since, Kay. I've kind of run off, but thank you very much because she invited me into her home, gave me her time, and it was all very, very, very genuine. So thank you very much. Since then, I started 5 years ago More Education as a supplementary school. I had a few students, black students in a predominantly non-black school who were begging me to give them extra tuition because I think I'd come to that school as supply and they'd never really experienced that kind of energy and connection before. So that's how we started 5 years ago. We started with, I think it was two students in a room. We now, this intake, we have 75 spaces online. We've transitioned online where we offer maths, English, financial intelligence, and world and African history. That's going to start in September. We are also, one of the reasons why I'm here is I'm in discussions with some teachers here with the beauty of online, we can have teachers anywhere in the world to start our Key Stage 3 homeschool in January. So yeah, and a lot of that homeschooling kind of mindset started with a lady called Kay Johnston who invited me into the home and gave me her time. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to be in the same panel as you from the inception. So yeah. Let's.
I must admit, I haven't gone online yet. I still prefer the personal touch. Perhaps I'm too old for that right now. And
No,
I've been since the lockdown, been involved in so many different things. It's unbelievable. But I mean, the range of subjects is just brilliant. I mean, for me, what has been good for me is that I've been able to upskill myself because I felt that if I'm going to have these children for 3 days a week, then I felt, I just wanted to give more. So I, trained to do English and PE. I'm not particularly fond of teaching PE, but I could if I needed to. But I mean, I teach English, math, science, history, geography, Black history, financial literacy, business studies, PSHE, citizenship, whatever. And we have Frank time once a month where it's a chance for the children to just sit down together informally and just talk about things that bother them. And it's surprising how many things come out where they can talk about things that, finding it difficult to express love, and the thing, how do they express love to their families, when they're always coming across as aggressive and angry, and, and so we trash these things out. And I also do what I call the journey process with those children who, feeling a bit out of sorts. They've got all sort of issues. They come in with baggage, and as soon as they arrive at the classroom, they just say, "Okay, what's up? Wait for me in the gazebo." That's our meeting point. And then you start off with simply like breathing exercises, and then I go through a process with them. And sometimes, if it's necessary, to bring the parents in, or parent as it is for most of these children. And I've never met any of the dads so far, but I mean that's just the way it is. And I would go through with this parent, and very often you find that for some parents, they are actually repeating things that happened in their own childhood with their own children without even realizing it. So it's going through the same process with the parents and that kind of healing. And then I bring them together and I'll just walk away and leave them to do their own reconciliation. But it absolutely works because it is so liberating. And until that is done, they don't realize, because there's so many things that are stored in the subconscious that you tend to think, oh, that was a long time ago, you've forgotten it. Until you go through a process like that and everything starts rising to the fore, and then you have to confront it and deal with it. And then just free it and let it go. It is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, I do the emotional journey with these children. I've done one with my daughter when she was ill. and freed up a lot of things. Okay, I mean, except she still died 2 years later, but I mean, I was able to, in a matter of 20 minutes, shrink the tumor in her leg because she was taught how to forgive whatever it is that she was holding without even realizing it, the resentment and everything else, by about 5 centimeters in about 20 minutes. I actually got the nurse to measure her leg before and after I did that process with her, and they couldn't believe what was happening. So yeah, I mean, that's what healing does. And for me, I just love what I do, and as long as my brain is working, I will continue. And there is absolutely no one who's going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. I don't care who you are, it's not going to stop. Yeah.
So, brother Ziggy, tell us a bit about, what you're doing and who you are.
Just to kind of add on to what Miss Johnson was saying, okay. A lot of the work that we do, and I think it has to be recognized, yes, we are educators, but when we're dealing with children from our community, it's a lot more holistic. It's a lot more holistic than that, and a lot of it is the emotional, psychological kind of side of things, and that's really where our expertise lies with our children. And a lot of people, I can't remember what group I saw it in. No, I do remember. It was the Black British Parents Group on Instagram, and it amazed me because I realized I work in this bubble where people it was a conversation about the need for black schools, and somebody was saying, "Oh, I hate a black school, and we don't need black schools," and so on and so forth. And I kind of understood, or I was reading into what they were saying, but I think what we really tend, especially parents, and it's only when children really hit into problems in the education system, when we realize the psychological effects of our children being in what I like to continually term as a hostile environment. I term schools as hostile environments because, as we recognize with all institutions that we're a part of, we suffer racism, but it's more insidious with children because they're unable to articulate, or they don't even have a word for what it is, and it manifests within because they're very sensitive, and children are very malleable. It affects them, I would say, almost on a cellular level, not to kind of get that deep, more so than it does when we're adults, and we really don't understand how insidious or how our school system works. And we really take for granted the impact that it has on our children. It's only when we start to see these behaviors and we start to, when they get to teen, especially the boys, once the testosterone pumps in and they're unable to articulate it, they're unable to cry, they're unable to express that emotion, that we begin to see what the issue is. So more so than just being an educational hub. And that's one of the reasons why I was reluctant to go online initially, Kate, because I didn't think I'd be able to have that connection with the children, because that's my bread and butter. How I would sell myself when I'm taking private contracts, when I'm doing supply work, is I would ask for a certain fee, because I walk into a room, you give me 20 minutes and I have the entire classroom. Yeah, I can have this I don't care I don't need to look at anything previously, because that was my selling point. So I always thought it wouldn't be able to translate. However, I've found I'm able to translate online, and the beautiful thing is you have a wider reach. Whereas me being based in North London, our centre was in Edmonton. We went online just after COVID-19, so we did almost like an online school. We did an hour every day of something. Some of my teaching friends chipped in and helped, and we were able to kind of get some things done. Even non-teaching friends, like my accountant who runs financial literacy classes, everybody kind of chipped in. And we had children from all over England. I had a child who was stuck in Grenada on lockdown. So the reach online, and you're able to still develop those one-to-one relationships, you're still able to offer that counseling, that guidance that our children so desperately need. I think, for me, I think it's really taken for granted, or we as a community. I think, and I'm going to use a term that I really despise, but it's the only term I could possibly use to best capture. I think within the conscious, quote unquote, community, who are always kind of fighting against something, we're more cognizant of the impact of the education system on our children. Maybe we're able to articulate it from a conscious perspective. But beyond that, most people are willing and quite happy to send their child to kind of the local primary school, which for me is madness. It's tantamount. It's crazy. It's crazy for you to have a black child and to send them to the local primary school based on an Ofsted. Yeah.
I have no regard for Ofsted, so that's well known. Yeah.
Which nowhere in the Ofsted criteria does it talk about how children's health, well-being in regards to their race or regards to their background and how that's dealt with. Sorry, my son decides to call me even though I told him not to. For the next hour, yeah. Sorry. It's crazy, and I think as a community, one of the things that we need to do, and I caught the end of what Brother Nye was saying, who's done an amazing job with NAPS, like a hardcore activist for years, is we need to have a centralized system that or criteria by which we judge our schools by for black children, because our children are out there suffering. I taught for over 10 years, 12 years, not as long as UK, but I did a little bit, and I've seen, I've witnessed, I've been party to, I've spoken to children who are now adults. And what it's like going to school, having to deal with passive-aggressive teachers, having to deal with unjust sanctions, like over a 5-year period, from 7 to year 11. I'm just talking about secondary school. Forget what man's been through in primary school. And it's if there are any, I know probably most of the parents in the room are probably going to be of a similar mentality. But this is why, for me, this now opportunity to create, I'm more so of an advocate of physical schools, but a whole schooling network where you don't have to send your child to school to suffer the degradation and the humiliation and the psychological warfare that they're put under in the age of 5. And we can seriously put something together. I think we definitely need to explore this as much as possible. Hence why I'm here. We'll be starting ours in January, fingers crossed. So yeah, I hope that's somewhat answered your question.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's loud here, so that's why my mic's muted. It takes ages. And what you've answered is absolutely brilliant. So there's a few things that some people that were online early would have heard, and there's others that have come on later on. Even with regards to Kay, what made you start doing what you're doing, and how are you finding working with our young people? Are they thriving? Because a lot of them, when they're in the education system, they're failing. They can't concentrate, they won't concentrate, they're badly behaved, they need to be sanctioned heavily, zero tolerance, all of these things. Now, you've taken quite a lot of those labeled children and you are educating them. How have you found them in comparison to what the system has said these children are like, and the progress that you've seen them make?
Okay, I can start on that one. I have spent my career while I was in school working in these so-called challenging schools. I've never found any single one of them challenging, because you're dealing with human beings, and I've always had good relationships with the children and their parents. So I don't know where the challenging comes in. I think they just think that because it's to do with socioeconomics, they're going with a perception that these children will be difficult children. I've never found it that way. But what sparked what I'm doing now, and the need for why I walked away from the system, is that there was too much of the herding. You can't, for what I like to do, the wraparound care, you can't do it in class sizes of 30 and 35. It is absolutely impossible. I mean, I've tried and I've done it, but it's not as, you realize it's not as effective, because you've got these children who spend moving from one lesson to the other and being told that they're nothing. So by the time they get to you, they're just so demoralized because that's all they've been told. I can't do it. Or they're constantly being excluded from one thing or the other. You're excluded because you're wearing the wrong color shoes or the wrong type of shoes. It's black, but and then when you listen to the parents, not some parents cannot afford to buy a pair of black trainers and a pair of black shoes, and the schools don't understand that. So you penalize the child because of what the parents can, or keep sending them home or turning them back at the gate. And so, by the time they come back in the classes ahead, they never catch up. And these feelings of, poor self-worth it's what sets in. And then, people like me and you who've got to try and put that together again and work with the parents. And, and I've just decided it was just not what I wanted to do anymore. And I sort of looked on at that when I was working at a school in Croydon. And, I was put in charge of attendance and behavior, because I noticed a pattern of the year 10s and 11s, particularly from year 10, where the children were voting with their feet and not coming into school. And what I noticed, the children, particularly those from the so-called bottom sets, were just not coming in. So the attendance had dropped off, and we had the local authority started to put the school under scrutiny, so I was asked to take over. So I'd make phone calls home and speak to the child rather than the parent, just look, why are you not in school? And you'd get things like school's rubbish, etc. And I said, okay, what would make you want to come to school? And I said, okay, if you could change things, what would make school exciting for you? And it's from listening to those children that I started making notes and decided we needed something that was completely different. The one-size-fits-all approach was not working. It is never going to work, and we can't. You have to have education must wrap around the child, not the child thrown into a melting pot and you just take it or leave it. And that is what schools do not understand, particularly these multi-trust academies. That's all they do. Some of them have got a standard curriculum and everybody's doing the same thing at the same time across their schools. And it's absolutely crazy, because the schools are in different areas, they've got different types of children, and you can guarantee if you go in after October half term into any of their academies, every single class is doing the same thing at the same time. That's crazy. That's too robotic. Children and minds are not like that. And so it was switching off a lot of children. That's why you've got such poor behavior coming out from a lot of these academies. And so what they started bringing in draconian methods of dealing with, and in comes the isolation booths, etc., which is psychological abuse. So for me, the focus on small and nurture is what works, particularly for the children coming out of the system and feeling as if they're nothing and they can't achieve. And suddenly, they're working with me, and you find that these kids are so talented, they're so bright, they're so eager. I had one parent came to say, what have you done with my son? He's 15 and he keeps walking up and down behind me telling me, this is what I did and that's what I did. She said, he hasn't done that since he was 5. What are you doing with him? You should say he's driving around with this. But I mean, he was so excited about what he was learning that, it made a huge difference. And it's that focus on nurture that you do with the children. If the teachers complaining that, oh, these children are not doing any homework, and then you speak to the kids and realize that they haven't got any lighting at home. So what I did was, you buy things like solar lamps, and I actually had it charging up on my desk during the day. Called them at the end of the day. So right, when you get home, this just works like a lamp. You switch it on when it's dark, and there you've got light. And that's how, and that's what wraparound care looks like. You make sure that they're not hungry. You can't teach hungry children, so you feed them. And I used to keep, and I still do, high energy biscuits. If you see a child fading this morning, here, have one of these, and a drink of water or whatever. And it just gets the blood sugar levels up and they're back, and then and there's always, when they come to me, there's always fresh fruit so that they can have that at any time. This is always there, and have an apple, have whatever it is that's in season at the time. Because some children leave without having anything. There's always access to hot drinks if they need it. There's a sandwich making facility so that they can have that. no questions asked. If you're hungry, there's food, you go and you eat it. And so when they know that there's that level of care, they come in willingly, they're not dragging their feet, they're there on time, and it's absolute bliss. I have got no discipline problems. I don't need to raise my voice, and these children are achieving way beyond what the schools got. The schools that have written them off get these children working from day one, and there's no ever turning back. For those people that get a bit frustrated, they keep saying, "Okay, we need our own schools," and they're thinking of these huge institutions that they can't afford, and then, we're never going to be able to do it. I can do it with 4 children. I can do it with 6. I don't want anything that is more than 10 children. And even that's pushing it a bit, because the small move just absolutely, it moves from being...
Sit her down, for goodness sakes. It's like you can't control the child.
And that is exactly what they need. And it's just brilliant. I mean, for me, there's absolutely no turning back. Absolutely none at all. So that is what, let's just put me on that path, and that's it, And I have a vision in my head of where we can pull all of our children out of these schools. And if you got a space for 5, okay, I'll come and help you set up. I can give you some of my resources. Just, you just have a passion for it, and you take it from there. Because these children, they need the nurture, they need help to get on to the next step, etc. You have some, you have them mentored. I mean, I do a lot of mentoring, but to get them mentored with people from the world of work, so that they get the work experience, which I've organized, and work placements. One of mine did so well in his work placement at a bank in Orpington that he was told, as soon as he finished, you can come back here, we've got a job for you. And it's that sort of connection that these children need. And it shows that you can do it from around your dining table, wherever you've got the space. As long as you are willing to put in the effort, these children will match you and overmatch you in their enthusiasm with the effort that you put in with them. So it does make it absolutely worth it.
There's actually a few comments here. Hold on, let me just read them for you. Hi, Kay and Ziggy, where are you based? And then it says, great job, Kay. How much do you charge for your services? And how would you be able to help someone based in Birmingham? And then Pauline says, yes, I would like to know too, very much interested. And Marlene Gokan says, me too. And yeah, it was Marlene who asked where you are, and Bianca Johnson who said, great job. Where are you based and how much do you charge?
Okay. Right. Well, I am based in Hither Green in Lewisham. That's in Southeast London, the great Southeast. I mean, where everything magical happens. I don't care what anybody said, Southeast is where it is. Yeah. Yes, I work from home. I've got everything I need. I'm very well equipped. When it comes to charging, I don't know. After I've been doing this for years, and I still say exactly the same thing, because I know that parents who decide to home educate don't have that budget. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm here to educate as long as my brain cells are working. So we negotiate on that one. But I mean, my interest is in seeing the child and, what can I offer? And I will offer, I can match whatever you want. I can come up with it. I've got all the resources, because I don't know how many of you know that I did actually have a small school until they decided that I'd offer the children too much care and too much education. That was illegal. So, I mean, looking back, I don't have any great regrets on that, because I don't have the overheads anymore. The rent of £2,100 a month, I don't have to pay that anymore. And it's just brilliant. So I have everything I need. I've got all the resources, and I've only just stocked up on some new geography books for September. And I'm looking forward to delivering that as well. So yeah, I've got everything I need. If you look on the school's website, I've got a telephone number that you can call, and we can take it from there. So I'm ready to start again in September.
Just to add, I think the first time I met Kay, I said we need to do a documentary because Kay's being quite modest, and she hasn't really revealed what her story is and what she's been through in the education system. because what her story is, I have a very similar story, and I could probably go into my phone right now and find another 10 black teachers with similar stories of what they've been through and how they've reached the journey. In starting the kind of pod-like system that we spoke about, we have so many teachers and so much a wealth of resources, education, but for some reason we're unable to tap into it as a community. We as he said, sorry, I think Kay said she has over 30 years of experience in education. Over 30 years of experience in education. Myself, over 10. And I'm a baby in the game. However, as much as I talk about what the children have been through, what many black teachers go through, have been through, all because of the love of wanting to see our children well. Which is why Kay wouldn't even, I'll be honest, I'm a bit different, wouldn't put a price on what she would be willing to charge. Black teachers stay behind for all children, not just black children, but for all children, stay behind, do that extra bit, give out their emails, do things over the summer. I've seen it, this commitment. However, and this is where I'm gonna kind of come in. If all of our parents had the same commitment that I see and I've experienced from black children, we really wouldn't need anything called the Black Child Agenda. And in all other communities, they seem to understand that their children are their greatest resources. And and this is in my experience, I don't, and this might be shooting myself in the foot, but until we're able to really put that time, care, and attention into our children and understand that they are our greatest resource, we're going to continue to not only suffer as a community, but we're going to continue to watch our children suffer. And we need, I think, again, I heard Brother Naya speak to it, we need to stop looking for others to come and help our communities and for grants. And I've had people send me things, and to anybody who sent me anything on WhatsApp about applying for a grant or what have you, I appreciate the sentiment, but it's not within my mentality. I'm a Pan-Africanist. I grew up as a Garveyite. That's it. It's do for self. That's how we've always seen it. And until we're willing to do for self and really go out of our way, and that's not necessarily just go out of our way in regards to research, go out in regards to find out. Sitting down and having a few conversations isn't going to really be good enough. We need some real action. Someone like Cheryl has been hugely inspirational. I have no idea how she does it. None whatsoever. I don't know what batteries she uses to charge herself to run up and down the country and go online and all of this madness. You with me?
Yeah.
But, sorry if you're hearing a bit of noise in the background. We've got some tile work going on. My apologies. I'm tiling up one. Yeah, but we need to kick up the bum, mate. We need a real kick. Our parents need a massive kick up the bum. I'm a little bit different too. I'm raw and I'm unapologetic. I don't care. I know I'm not gonna. Never been greatly liked as an individual, and that isn't really what I do. I know kids tend to like me more than adults, which is why I went into teaching. But until there's a massive kick, not just maybe we should homeschool. I'm thinking about homeschooling now. It needs to be like schools are toxic environments for our children. We need that. Not we need. Okay, where are the institutions? Okay, how do we fund NABS? How do we fund K? Are you with me? Okay, this more education thing. What are they on? Let's spend our money. And to some extent, I do kind of. It needs to also come outside of this conscious community thing. It needs to be standard practice. When I started my tuition service in North London, what I found was all of the other communities, extra tuition is standard. That's standard. It's actually almost seen as like a one-upmanship. If you are in your community and your child goes to tuition, like the other, and your child don't, they look at you like, right, your child don't go trick. What are you dealing with? Like, what's wrong with you? Standard. The where I was, we were opposite this mosque, huge building, of tutors. I think it's called Best Tutors in North London. Not go to them, come to me. More education, yeah. But they, in essence, had the Somali community on lock, and you had a few Turkish people who went there. If you're Turkish and you don't send your child to extra tuition, you're a joke. You're a joke. I would say 80% of my intake was from the black community. I took to the school I was working in. I had a couple of the Turkish students came up to me and was like, "Oh, sir, like they love the way I teach. We heard you do the extra tuition. Some of the black kids, can we come?" I was like, "Yeah, it's open. It's cool." I would have had, let's say I've had a good handful of, say I've had about 10 Turkish students. I've met one parent. One. They send their kids, they have an envelope with £50 notes in. Sometimes they pay 2 months, sometimes they pay 3 months. The most I'll get is a thank you. I've had thank you notes because most of them don't even speak English. English isn't their first language. A lot of the Turkish kids, they don't speak English. However, they send their kids to tuition. They come, they're ready. I get paid. I've never had to worry about money. Sometimes I've tried to give money back. They've given it back. Now, it's crazy to me because when we're dealing with our community, it's almost like sometimes, because I'm a bit egotistical, I don't like to beg. It's like I'm begging, send your child. You want to wait until Easter of year 11 and then call me. I was calling you 2 years ago telling you start the kid in year 10. I was telling you 2 years ago, I don't know, this, that, and the other. And I'll say, yeah, and I'm faced it. So I'll say, yeah, send him to me in Easter. I'll take your money, but he ain't going to pass, or I'll try my best. You with me? I can't offer you any guarantees. You send him to me in year 10, I'll make sure he passes in year 11. You send him to me in year 7, geez, by the time that child gets to year 11, he can teach the class. But and again, I appreciate. I come from quite a privileged background where I know my mum, I should say my parents, were very, very committed to mine and my brother's educations. I think I spoke about this on the other YouTube. I went to Saturday schools. I went to Claudia Jones. When I was a bad boy in primary school, because I was a naughty boy, I was naughty. I was. My mum pulled me out. My dad was supposed to send me to Jamaica. My mum begged for me. She sent me to John Loughborough and paid the fees. Now, we weren't Adventists, but they were very aware that this little boy isn't going to operate in the circumstances. So I appreciate my journey is quite different, and I've seen my parents invest in my education, invest in supplementary schools, all of those kind of, that's been a standard. However, I realize that's not standard in our community, and I think that sometimes even in my business where I struggle. And until we understand that there's no other way of getting around it, there are no shortcuts, there's no magic formula or pill. More education, our magic formula or pill is if you attend every class, if you attend every single class, I can guarantee you what will happen at the end. If you do every piece of homework and attend every single class and you're engaged, and I make personal calls, as you said earlier, it's not more than just kind of turning up. My phone number is available to all parents. Sometimes I'm called to turn my phone off. So until that within our community is standard practice, that be it from removing our children from schools to start our own thing, or if that's not something you're comfortable with, supplementary education is standard for every child, no matter what. Until we get to that point and that mentality, our children are going to have some serious problems in the education system. And God knows, I was speaking to somebody, God knows what's going to happen in September. I know this is quite crass, I'm going to be honest. But I was speaking to a teacher the other day, and I was saying, oh, because of COVID-19, schools aren't going to be back. Exclusions are going to go down. I took out £100. I said, "There's £100. I bet you." And any of the kids who have taught me know that's one of my favorite things to say. I bet you £100 by December. School exclusions, specifically for boys, black boys, are going to rock it. I'm telling you that from now. And they were like, "Oh no, we're not sure. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see." So, yeah, I'll stop my rant there. Unless you have a question.
Not yet, but I do have a lot of comments, and we also have our super sister, Mrs. Leah Salmon, there waiting to do her introduction. But let me just go back to some of these comments. And there's quite a few, mostly on YouTube. Oh, let me keep going. Sorry. Right, so that was up to Pauline, who asked, "How can we contact you?" Bianca Johnson says, "It's a shame I'm so far." Well, this is why we're online. Joanne Moore, Kay, you are an inspiration. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Who is this? Jennifer Douglas says, "Thanks to COVID, my daughter has become used to being educated online. She will be home educated going forward. I'm relying on more education being online as nothing available locally." Bianca Johnson says, "I want to homeschool my son and in a situation he's 14 and need to get things in order for him, but we are not in London." That's fine. Marley says, "What year do you teach?" I think that's to both of you, but hold on, let me go down. Jennifer Douglas says, "Bianca, that's the beauty of online education. Go for more education. Kiss, kiss." Bianca Johnson says, "Thanks, Jennifer. I will look at..." They're having a chat amongst themselves. "I will look into them. I wish I was based in London, as I do prefer face-to-face rather than online, as my son is born into an online world and don't like him online so much, but it looks like I don't have a choice." No, we don't. Jennifer says, yeah, they're having a chat amongst themselves, but we'll share the discussion. "I wasn't going that way, but saw how well my daughter adapted to it. Many tutors are online now. I've signed her up for more education and young black leader course." Camille London Mio says, "Absolutely right, Mr. Moore. If we invest in our young people, our community will be stronger." Jennifer Douglas says, "Ziggy, I have all the faith in you." Hey, where's it gone? Let me go back. So something about syrup. Wow, this is like, stop typing, people. I cannot keep up. Here we are. "Ziggy, I have all the faith in you, my brother. Signed my daughter up with more education. Love your spirit." Brown Hank says, "Hello." Brown Hank says, "What's your opinion on the syrup sandwiches in the hood?" Joanne Moore says, "Ziggy, you too are an inspiration. Thank you for your work." Nicole Cohen says, "I have just joined. Can I catch up after this? My children are 4 and 3. I would love to homeschool." And then Ems Brown says, are there any Saturday school in East London? Right, so that's just to keep you up to... Yes, there are M's, by the way, and we'll let you know Nabs' detail. I'll post it in the group, and I'll try and post it on the Facebook. So let us introduce our sister here, who is a homeschooler, businesswoman, entrepreneur, mummy, dietitian, all kinds of different things this young lady does. Please introduce yourself, Mrs. Salmon.
Greetings. Firstly, apologies for being so late. And Ziggy and Kay, it's lovely to see you guys. And thank you, Cheryl, for putting this on in the first place. So my name's Leah Salmon. My main job is as a home educating mother of our 6 children who are aged between 15 and 4. When I was, even though actually as a child, I went to a state primary school in Harlesden. I went to John Keeble in Harlesden. My dad, actually, I found out, I thought it was my mum, but it was actually my dad that said that he didn't want us to go to secondary school in Brent because he knew that the secondary schools just were not great there. So my mum then basically worked her butt off to be able to send us to a private school. So I grew up with the contrast of knowing what it was like to be educated in the state school system, and then the very stark difference of being taught in a privately educated environment, and the opportunities that were available to those children, and the focus that was given to those children, and the care and attention that was given to children in the private school system. So when I got pregnant with our first child, and she grew to the age where she would go to school was a consideration, I automatically wanted to send her to a private school. And then we had another child, and then we had another child. And when I started doing the maths, private school education for more than one pickney is a thing. So, but what we also realized is that my husband and I were in a position where we could craft our lives around home educating the children, so we could give them the same level of private school education that I was afforded without the cost of private school education, and also keeping them in an environment where their cultural needs were very much catered to. Because one thing I was very clear about in private school is that even though my academic ability was higher and I had more opportunity to exceed academically, not one of my cultural needs was met. Not there, I think there was one Black teacher in my whole school at one point, and out of the 400 and just over 400 girls that were in the school, there were at any one time, the most Black children there were 4 Black children in the whole school, and that was me and my sister. Me and my sister made up 50% of the Black population in the whole school, fam. So and you know what, it wouldn't have been so bad, because on one hand I felt very special because I was the only Black child. So I was the one that could dance. I was the one whose hair didn't turn to rat's tails when it rained. I was the one that was, really good at sports. And I began to, it's only when I left the school that I realized I was almost like the cliche token Black friend in that school. Do you know what I mean? So I also realized I didn't want my children to I didn't want my child to go to a school where they were academically getting a lot, but then I had to come home and brainwash them of the white supremacy that comes along with a private school education. Now, if we wanted to move to Jamaica or, Africa, then they probably would have been able to get a private school education and been around a lot more Black children. But I knew that just wasn't possible in this country. So because my husband and I are both self-employed, we basically crafted our lives around home educating the children. And believe it or not, the more children we had, the easier that job actually became, because I think a lot of people feel that it's going to be more difficult to home educate your child, for a variety of reasons. But I know that some of the things that I know I definitely benefit from as a home educating mother is that I don't have to undo a lot of the work, a lot of the things that they're subjected to at school. I have parents, I've spoken to parents, and I know parents who are like, oh, they picked this up at school and they picked that up at school, and they're coming back and they're wiping their nose on their sleeve and back chatting me. I don't have to deal with all of that. Like the only teacher I need to pull up is myself or my husband. So we very much get to have a lot more control over what our children are exposed to, but we also get the opportunity to allow our children to explore their own learning desires. So I'm a bit of a pushy mum. I'm a bit of a pushy helicopter mum. Hands up to that. So there are definitely things I want my children to learn. But I also realize that everyone's going to have a better experience as far as education is concerned if they have a lot of input in what they're learning. So if I tell them I want them to learn something, that's one thing, and they'll do their best. But if they tell me they want to learn something, then I facilitate that learning, then everyone's a winner, because they already started off wanting to learn that. And I don't think everyone has as much trust in their children's ability to decide for themselves, because we're not used to, because we didn't grow up with adults trusting us. We didn't typically grow up in an environment where adults trusted us enough some of us didn't even get to choose our own clothes or what we ate, much less what we learned. So we're not used to a child being trustworthy. But one of the things I've really learned through learning about our history and through education, I realized that 12-year-olds in ancient Egypt were studying degree level information. and inventing things and designing things. And even the GCSE test papers for 50 years ago, they would mash up a degree level student right now, because things are just continually getting dumbed down and things are continually getting easier. So it's not that a child doesn't have the ability to learn, it's what adults decide they can learn. So when we take that, so that's one thing I learned from studying our history. And then looking at my children, I can see that my children can be trusted. And it gives them the ability to start where a lot of us are starting when we've left school. When we've had a couple of jobs that we've hated, then we're like, you know what I'm actually passionate about is gardening. What I'm actually passionate about is social care. Whereas a lot of us have been brainwashed by the school, because the school system, I'm sure you guys have all covered this already, but we know that the school system was designed to educate children so that they could get a job and be active members of, you know, the industrial world that we were creating, as opposed to going to school to become better beings themselves. And a lot of us go through school thinking, I'm doing this to get a job, I'm doing this to pass exams and get a job, and it doesn't really matter how much I like it, how much I love it, whether it's good for me. I just have to tick boxes so adults are happy. And then we have this epiphany in our 20s, 30s or 40s that in fact this is what we want to do, and then we start there. Whereas with home education, you get that opportunity to allow your children to make those decisions from a much earlier age. And my brother is a guy called Julian Hall, and he's got a company called Ultra Education. And that's exactly what he's doing. He realized that as a business owner himself, he realized that he was ending up mentoring a lot of adults who were coming to this stage where they were almost breaking free from the mental shackles they had from education that told them they had to do things in a particular way. And he realized that if he could expand the mind of children to get them to think more entrepreneurially as children, that was actually really holistic for their general education. It taught them responsibility. It taught them about how they can look after other people, group economics, Black economics. There's so many things you can learn in that process. But again, we tend to not do it until someone's been so jaded by the education system and life that is, you know, some people are just, you know, desperately hanging on to wanting the approval of, well, I've got this degree certificate and I've got this GCSE certificate, and we don't have to put our children through that. So I think one of the big silver linings of COVID-19, which I'm sure I'm so sorry for coming late, so I'm sure you guys will express this already, but one of the silver linings of COVID-19 is that a lot of parents have got to spend time with their children, and they've got to know their children, and they've realized their children aren't actually as scary as they thought, or as scary as the teachers made their children out to be. And in fact, my child is not an apprehensive learner. He just doesn't like you, fam. You just don't know, you're not teaching him properly. That's what you don't like. That's what makes him scary. It's because you're not taking time with him. It's because you're not listening to him. It's because you're not adapting to his style. It's because you've already automatically decided he's a Black boy and he's more aggressive. Or you've automatically decided she's a Black girl and she's probably going to end up being one of the stereotypes you have about us. But a lot of us are realizing how much potential has been locked inside our children, that the confines of the education system, unless you've got a very switched on and focused teacher that cares, it's going to stay locked inside that child until something breaks it out. And I know that there are some teachers that go into the profession with the best intentions, but the system can very easily crush that out of a lot of very good teachers. It's just like with judges and nurses and doctors. The system and the bureaucracy around what a lot of them have to deal with make it very difficult for them to really do what they want to do for our children. So I think that I'm glad I started my journey very early, but I also feel very confident that parents who are deciding to home educate now, this is an amazing time to do it, because you guys are all doing it en masse. A lot of us who have been doing it for a long time, there was a trickle of us. There was one person in London, North London, one in South, a couple in Birmingham. Now there's just an influx of people who are all making this decision at the same time. So you guys all get the opportunity to support each other on this journey. And then you've got some old heads like me that you can come to for advice, so we can make some of the transitions a bit more smoother for you.
Well, wasn't that an introduction? Sorry, I've been bitten by these. I'm talking. You 1 minute. Sorry, I've got a house full of children here. So I've got the baby over here wrecking stuff, and then these lot just around the place. What I was going to say as well is that with regards to one of the questions, and one of the things a lot of parents do say is that, oh, I don't know how to do, I'm not good at maths and English and science. I'm not sure, you know, what we can do, or other parents, you know, how do we get the network going when, you know, to me, the resources are there. But what would you say to these parents with regards to, first of all, their academic abilities, and secondly, with regards to where they can get more information and resources to support their children and family?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing I think you can maybe come to realize is that if you've got, maybe not teenage children, but if you've got young children and you've been through the primary school system, the secondary school system, the college system, you've got a degree, and that all of that education didn't make you feel confident enough to teach your primary school children, the schooling system probably isn't that empowering. So it's probably not, again, unless you've got brilliant teachers, that kind of does say something about the education system in and of itself. And if you do choose to take your child out of that system, that can be some of your motivation for your child's education, to leave them in a space where they feel comfortable enough to teach basic things to the next generation moving on. And we can really, because in private school education, one thing I've realized is that they don't just teach children academics, they create leaders. That's a big difference with the private school education.
Yes.
Their goal is to produce and pump out children who can take over things, whereas the regular education system doesn't seem to do that, which has left a lot of us who have been through it feeling very incapable of doing things. And it's not that we're incapable. Again, we just weren't empowered by our education. So for me, and one thing I will say is that I didn't know everything either. Like, all you need to be is one step in front of your child. That's all you need to be. And if you feel that you really are not able to be one step ahead of your child, then you get a tutor. Like, my eldest is 14, and then 15, and the one under her is 13. And I've realized at this point, I don't want to be one step ahead of them, because we're getting into GCSE maths. So I've now got them a tutor, and I've taken that responsibility out of my hands. So you don't have to feel pressured to do everything and to be everything for your child as their teacher. You don't have to be able to, you don't need to know what cos and tan and sine and cosine and parentheses and the power of the multiple of you don't need to know all of that. And there are so many, again, online resources that you can use to pull together a curriculum, because I understand that some people are not in a position to be able to financially afford private tuition. But if 6 homeschooling parents got together and paid one tutor that was happy to do an online class with 6 children and maybe charged a bit more, you can make things very affordable in that way. And I know Cheryl's got a homeschooling WhatsApp group. There are about 2 or 3 homeschooling WhatsApp groups that I'm in. And that's one of the main things that we do. We cooperatively fund the education of our children by hiring tutors and splitting the cost of them. So number one, most of you are more than capable of teaching your child. It's just that you haven't started yet. And sometimes that fear that we have stops us from even making an attempt to start teaching our child or our children in different subjects. And then again, like Cheryl said, there are lots of resources. And again, just in the same way we approach our work and we approach, managing our homes and managing our finances, it is about sitting down and planning. It is about, and again, one thing I always say is that sit down with your child and talk to your child about what they want to learn. It's again, we can trust our children enough to give us answers that we can work with. So, and even if your child says all they want to do is play computer games, then that's when compromise and discussion comes in. Because if your child is really into computer games, then maybe they can learn coding. Maybe they can learn graphic design. Maybe they can learn something that's linked to the computer games that they loved playing. And again, that compromise comes in. Okay, you will get to do that, but you just need to do this type of work first. But you get to choose the type of work that you do. We know maths can be incorporated in so many things. Literacy can be incorporated in so many things. So having that discussion with your child and finding out what they're really interested in, that can be the foundation of what you do teach them. And then do what you do best with your children, and then outsource the rest.
Yeah, it's got to be the way forward. When I used to do the show Home Time, one of the things I always said, I think probably about every week, that there's nothing wrong with learning alongside your child.
Yeah.
You know, because children, it's important for children to see their parents as not being, they don't have to be the font of knowledge. You know, and particularly with young ones, okay, if you don't know something, okay, let's go and find out together. And if looking on the internet, it could be an afternoon in a library or in a museum, or it is just so much fun finding out together. When I started, you know, developed an interest in Black history, I wasn't the font of knowledge. I mean, now I've got loads and loads of resources because I told the kids, point out, we're going to do this together. And, you know, this is what I've just discovered. Let's, you know, let me just share this with you. And we took it from there. And then, of course, you get onto Amazon, the Amazon basket, and a whole lot of other things come up. Oh, that looks good. That's cheap enough. And next thing you know, you've got a huge wealth of resources. And so the way that I teach it, it isn't taught to be something that is examined or assessed or anything like that. It's just for knowledge. So I tell the children, your books that you write your notes in becomes your thing. You go out and you teach others and you spread it out there. And if a new one joins the group, I get the kids to tell them, okay, tell them what you've learned. And they become suddenly teachers, and I just sit back and think, okay, you don't realize how much they've absorbed, and etc. So, you know, that's got to be the way forward. You don't have to be, you know, the be all and end all. I mean, one of the things I told children when the parents when I had my school is that the day your child knows more than you've lost that child, because you can't supervise their homework. You don't know what, you know, they can say, oh, yes, I've done it. And you're looking at it and you haven't got a clue. So it's important for parents, particularly if you're going to be homeschooling, that you know what it is they're doing, so that you can say, yes, the quality of that's good, or whatever. And, you know, I used to have, you know, parents who would come in the evenings to upskill themselves so that they keep abreast with their children. I mean, Key Stage 4 maths is out of my fault. I can manage Key Stage 2. Key Stage 4 maths, I tell parents point blank, if you want a maths teacher at Key Stage 4, you've got to find somebody else. I can cope with everything else, and anything that's literacy based, I'm fine. Key Stage 4 maths, and I reparted company, you know, that kind of thought since I was 8 years old, and I'm going back there. But I mean, that said, I still do maths. And, you know, I remember about 2 years ago, I actually sat down in my classroom and decided I must tackle algebra, because it was one of my fears when I was at school. As soon as she started, maths teachers started talking about numbers and letters, I just used to switch off, and I just thought it. And I sat down one afternoon and said, no, I owe it to these children. I was disgusted at how easy it was. And to think that I'd been avoiding it because I just thought it was something difficult. And so the next, you know, a neighbor across the road said, oh, my son's coming with this algebra and he can't do it. And I said, oh, yeah, sure, send him to me. I can do it, you know. I'd only just learned it like the week before, but I just got this kid through and I was able to teach it to him. And when she came to pick him up, she said, oh, my God, he's never done so much work. And I think, wow, if you only but knew. I taught myself this last week. And now I can do it, yeah, off the top of my head. You know, and that's how you build up that enthusiasm for things. So for parents who are now starting off, it's nothing to be afraid of. You know, every child, and you can be home educating 4 of your children, you will find that every single one of your children has got a different style of learning. There's no one size fits all. You know, so you go with your children, you know, and you get your children enthusiastic about learning when you can match or understand how best they learn. You know, I can't think of a single child who's looking forward to September to going back to uniform, detentions, silent corridors, or anything like that. It is just not going to happen, you know. So, yeah, looking, you know, and this sort of, one of the academies has got this, what they call flattening the grass. And I mean, I'd love to see it in action, because yes, they line the kids up along the corridor and they bark in their faces like 2 inches away. And I think of some of the schools I've worked in, I'm thinking, you flatten the grass, they would flatten you out, you know. because it is abuse. It is abuse of power. It is demeaning. You don't need to screaming in children's faces, and then you punish them when they become aggressive to other people, because it isn't acceptable at any level. So again, it's don't be afraid to start on that journey. And as I say to a lot of parents, if you want help with resources, just get in touch with me. I've got so much. There is no way I can use all of it myself. Come and help yourself. I can give you some strategies as to how to get started, or on any of the topic. And that I've got resources for every subject. So yeah, let's you've got my number. Let's just talk about it.
Just to quickly add, any parents to the amazing things that have been said already. This is a teaching. Well, it's a teaching. What would it be? A theory of, and you can Google it. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. I did it in my teacher training, and it's what I use to reinforce a lot of the stuff we do in more education. Now, we tend to, and I think Leah touched on it, we tend to see learning as a process of kind of what we call rote learning, repetitive, so on and so forth. And the lowest form of learning in Bloom's is knowledge. Knowledge and understanding come at the bottom. Where our children actually struggle, and this is where, and one of the best teaching strategies I find is analysis and evaluation. Now, if you're learning at analysis, evaluation, and synthesis, or to be able to create, yeah. So based on what you've learned and what you understand, you're able to now create based on that. So if, as a parent, you are learning at the same time as your child, and you can discuss, analyze, and evaluate what you're actually teaching. Like I do this with my son. I'm like, did you know? I'll send him something on YouTube. I'm like, I didn't even know that. Like this is how I speak to my son. So I'm trendy. And we're like, did you see that? And he's like, yeah. So I said, what do you think about that? And he'd be like, no, he was wrong. And when he did that, he should have done that, innit? Boy, I would have done this, He goes, so, all right, so if you was in that situation, what would you do? Because I would have done all of those higher order thinking skills, which are you're evaluating, you're analyzing, and it's almost creating. Because as soon as you say, okay, what would you have done? That's creating, because we've analyzed, we've evaluated what's happened, and then we're now able to create a scenario of what you would have done. Very basic, very simple, yeah. And that can be done from a point of view of where you have a similar knowledge point. It doesn't. When teaching, we assume we have to have a superior knowledge point to be able to instruct or to be able to deliver the knowledge. However, that isn't necessarily always the best point to teach from. When I teach, I remember I was observed one time in the good old days where people used to come up and say, and I would always start a lesson saying, I'd fumble around and say, what did we do last lesson again? Where's that one? And a kid would put that up and say, we did this. I said, you sure we did this? And they said, yeah. I said, what? And he did that. And they go, yeah. And the kids would really, and they would really. And at the end of the lesson, I think it was one of mine, they said, we would give you an outstanding, but we marked it as a good. And we went through why it was a good go. At the beginning of the lesson, you didn't really seem to understand what happened last lesson. We weren't sure. Was that? And they asked, was it? I said, that's a strategy. And he goes, you know what? That's a brilliant strategy, because it gets the children engaged, and it also helps them to remember what happened last time. There are going to be the students who don't remember, so the others can remind them. That's the strategy, and we need to think about getting our children to be at the level of analysis and evaluation at all points from the age of 3. 3-year-old can analyze and break something down probably better, than your 16-year-old students, because they're sponges.
Yeah.
And it's asking those, so what do you think about that? And do you think that? And if you can get them consistently from 3 years old, constantly analyzing and evaluating, once they get to secondary school, because again, that's a lot of the reasons why when our children go into primary schools that they have the problems. That's actually what we do. that is what we do, and then they're kind of dumbed down. So if you are homeschooled, that was the only thing I was going to add, just from a teacher perspective. I know that Kay would support me. That is, it's not a disadvantage. Most teachers are usually only half a step or one step ahead. I've met some very, very, that was the most conservative way to say this, teachers whose knowledge base is very limited, and you would be very surprised at the fact that they're allowed to teach people and are paid. I think I think that's the best way for me. I've met some dunce teachers, like some dunce, some people, senior management. And again, this is, I'll tell you, this is why I always get in trouble at schools as a teacher. I've been kicked out of schools, because I'm looking at a senior manager. I'm looking at you like, you're right, you're a proper dunce. Like, I've had heads of departments who are literally like, and they're on like 50K a year. I'm supposed to sit down and not say nothing. So please don't be intimidated. Enough of your, there are some teachers who aren't that bright, and you would more than likely do a superior job. So just to support what both Leah and Kay have said, please don't be intimidated by it. Use it to your advantage. Dunce teachers, sorry. Not lying. I've got evidence. Not lying.
The right honorable, the Honorable Michael Gove, who said that the only teacher in a school that needs qualified teacher status is a Senko. So you've got a lot of schools who are, I get the education news in my inbox at 7 every morning, and you've got a lot of schools who are advertising for unqualified teachers. That means that anybody who's got a notion about something, go in and teach. Because they've got this government has got this idea that any fool can teach, anybody can teach. You know, you want to teach there, just go into a school and register your interest, and that's it. And then it comes to a point where your subject knowledge is so shallow that the kids are overtaking you, so they put on this bravado and try to put the children down when they start asking intelligent questions, because they haven't done their research and they haven't done their homework either.
That's why you're in trouble. They're called facey, because they ask those difficult questions. Yeah. They ask those difficult questions and make the teachers feel uncomfortable. She says, "Get out. Just get out. You're being rude." Sorry.
You know, I've got a headline in my head that I hope that I live long enough to see. It says, "Where have all the black children gone?" Because we have taken them all out of their schools and educated them ourselves. And that's my goal. You know, we've got to do it, because, you know, the more I look on at what's going on out there, the more dissatisfied and concerned I am that they're going the wrong way. And, you know, with this COVID-19 and this, you know, concern about getting children back into schools and it's catch up, and I'm not stressed about catch up. As far as I'm concerned, what's a year, you know, in comparison to the rest of your life? Start the year again, you know, because some children, it's impossible to carry on from where the last Zoom lesson, because not everybody would have taken it in. Not everybody has access to the internet. So where do you carry on from? So as far as I'm concerned, there's absolutely nothing to get stressed out about. Start the year again in September and see how it goes. And if we have to go in lockdown again, well, then they're going to have to come up with something else. But it really is nothing to get stressed about. I mean, I read the stuff in the news and get a bit frustrated that they're putting a kind of panic out there among parents and teachers as if it's all their fault. Start the year again, start all over. Some people, you know, as in any school and in any learning situation, some would have grasped it more than others, and some you need to go over it again. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. But to make those children feel that they were inadequate because they haven't grasped as much as they should have done, or you know, that's somebody's perception. Children develop at different rates. There's no two ways about it. And if you're a parent, you will see that even among your own children. They develop at different rates. You can't say that at 5 they should be doing this, at 16 they should be doing that. I refuse to I remember saying to the DFE, we will assess children when they're ready. And they looked at me as if I just landed from Mars. There is no magic trigger that says at 14 you must know this, at 16 you must know this. If you're not ready at 16, you do it at 17. And if you're not ready at 17, you can do it at 20. It does not matter. You know, your self-esteem will get you through. If you break down that self-esteem, then you break that young person, and they can't function in anything because they think, yeah, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to do it. Nobody's going to give me that chance. But yeah, your self-esteem will open doors for them and take them in places that they never thought that they could do it. Yeah,
one of the things that I think way before the COVID situation, every time that I've spoken about home education, I think some people think some people kind of not take it too seriously, but they think it's like a permanent decision. And it doesn't have to be a permanent decision, because right now I know some parents are saying, I don't want to put my child back into school until everything is calm, because I don't want them to go back into school and be stressed out. So I'm not making the decision I want to home educate for the rest of their life. I just don't think right now is the best time to put them back in. And that's the situation right now. Previously, there's been times when, you know, parents want to take their children out of school because they're having a really hard time in school, and they take their children out of school for a few months. And then that break has been the best thing that could have possibly happened to that child. And when the child goes back into the school system, because they've had a break, because they've, you know, had some time away from the, like Kay was saying, away from the threats of detention and threats of I'm going to call your parents and threats of you're going to be a failure and, you know, threats of we're going to put you in a PRU and suspension and all these kind of things. When they just have time to just be with their parents, be at home, get some time to think, not be stressed out, because children are experiencing high levels of stress right now. They may not have the stress of not knowing whether they're going back to work or how they're going to pay the bills, but they're experiencing their own very real types of stress, and they just sometimes need a break. So parents who are considering home education now, don't think that if you make the decision to home educate that you can never put your child back into school again, because you have the freedom to be able to do that. No one is suggesting, however, that you flip and flop your child in and out of school like it's a revolving door. But if you don't feel right now is definitely the right time to put your child back into school, then give yourself a time. Okay, we're going to home educate. We're going to do this thing for a year. Now, when you put timescales on things, on anything, it allows you to see it as not as big as it is. It's not like you're now going to be responsible for their education for the rest of their life. You're just taking a year. So like Kay said, it's not that big of a deal when it's just a year, when it's just 12 months. All you need to do is get them through 12 months of education at home, and during that time they can explore their own interests. You can teach them things. If they've got a business they want to start, they can do that. If there's a language they want to learn, they can do that. Then when you are ready to put them back in and they're ready to go back in, then you can decide how you're going to proceed. Do you want to get them back up to the same academic level they would have been at? Have they already surpassed the academic level they're going to be at when they go back in? Because that's a very real reality, which Cheryl definitely knows, which Kay definitely knows. When children spend some time out of school, when they go back in, they're leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of the children that are in school, because they've just come from a very private school, whereas they're the only student to a school where they're...
Oh, you're frozen there.
So it's okay to have that break. And sometimes we need the break. Sometimes our children need that break from the relationship that is school. You know, like when you've got that person that's always been in a relationship and they don't know what it's like to not be in a relationship. Our children need that break sometimes. They need to know what it's like to not respond to a bell. Like, they're not Maslow's dogs. They don't really need to, like, some children only start work when they hear a bell. They only start work when there's someone standing up at the front of the room with a blackboard in front of them. They don't even know the concept of self-directed learning. So what Ziggy was doing by getting them motivated to help out, because asking those questions to his students, he was empowering his students to help the rest of the class. And again, not all children get that opportunity, again, because they're just not trusted. So we can do so much by just giving our children a break. And even some parents right now, I know a lot of parents are scared to send their children back. So if a parent feels they have to send their child back, they might be infusing their child with stress that the child didn't have in the first place. And then that's going to stress both of you out. And that's just no one's learning when you're stressed. Like at home, when we're doing work, I don't care how meticulously I've planned. If I'm stressed and I can see my children are stressed, the lesson's over. There's like, I used to do it when I used to have that I used to feel that societal pressure that if I've decided to home educate, my child needs to be a genius. They need to have like a 200 score on Mensa. They need to have a business. They need to learn 2 languages and play an instrument and, you know, open a charity and be a philanthropist by the age of 9. Because when you tell someone you home educate, all of a sudden, well, what are they learning? Well, can they do this? Well, can they do that? When you say your child's in school, no one asks you anything. No one asks you anything when you say your child's in school, because the assumption is, well, the school's handling everything. So there's nothing that the parent has to do at all. But I remember watching one of those like Good Morning Britain programs or something. And there was a home educating family that was on. And the mother, it's like she felt the need to justify her children's time at home. Billy can cook, he can clean the house, he can break down a computer and build it back up. He basically redesigned NASA software. You know, he balances my checkbook for me. And the presenter was like, well, how is he with maths and literacy? I said, and you see that? That's what it all boils down to. No one cares. No one cares what your child does unless they know maths and literacy. And that's the paradigm shift that needs to happen in the education system and in society generally, that's going to make parents feel more comfortable with their decision. And let me tell you, parents, that paradigm shift ain't going to come very soon. So you just need to stand in your own power and understand that if you've made the decision to either full-time home educate your children or part-time give yourselves and your children a break from the education system until they sort their stuff out, stand in your power and make the best decisions for you and your child. Because if your child tells you that they want to be a cupcake artist, they don't need to learn about 1066 and the Battle of Hastings. They don't necessarily need to know the difference between a stalactite and a stalagmite in geography. They don't really need to learn all of that if they're going to be a cake artist. You need to get them in that kitchen and get them to make cakes every single day. They will learn literacy because they're going to have to eventually write recipes and write instructions and read recipes, and they're going to learn metrics. They're going to learn arithmetic because they're going to have to make double batches and triple batches and half the batches. They're going to learn all of those. They're going to learn strategies. They're going to learn business. They're going to learn art. They're going to probably get into music because that might be what's playing the whole time when they're making the cakes. We can create an individualized learning environment for our children where our children strive, because there's a little white girl in America who's about now 14 years old, and she was home educated, and this little girl earns close to something like 1.5 million pounds a year as an artist. Because when her parents saw that she was home educated, when her parents saw that she had an exceptional gift of art, they just let her paint. Whether that was for 4 hours a day or for 14 hours a day, they just let her paint. Now she's got a business that's worth 1.5 million. And that was a couple of years ago. Her business sustains the whole family. And when the mum was asked, what about stuff like maths? The mum was like, well, she doesn't really need it. And she doesn't really like it. And it's not really helping her with her work. And I remember the mum on another interview also said something along the lines of, if I stopped her painting to make her learn algebra, because everyone says that a girl her age should know algebra, where would we all be right now? Not that they were seeing the child as a meal ticket, but where would she be if we stunted her growth and said, no, stop flying so high with your art and go and sit down and learn some maths because everyone says you should. It's not necessary. We don't need to do that stuff.
And one thing I always say to parents as well is to involve your let you involve your children in what it takes to run a home, because they must know that things don't just automatically happen. And one thing I did is to teach them on budgeting, which is usually the first one is usually quite interesting, because they have this concept that when you say 25,000, that it's going to last the next 200 years, and then you start going through the stoppages, and then you give them like 35 minutes. Okay, when you get to the bottom line. Because you say things like, okay, you're 25 now. Where are you living? Are you back at home? No, I've got my own, got my own house. Okay, are you living in London? 25,000, you can't buy a house. So let's scale it down to a flat. What kind of flat have you got? 2-bedroom. You start subtract. Okay, I'm going to take out £1,500 out of there, 1875, and you write a budget for that, and then say, oh, can I have a 1-bedroom? Can I have a studio? Or whatever. And they have got to start budgeting, and that's so very important. But for those parents who like running a business from home, spend sometime during the week involving the child, showing them, this is what I do. You know, this is how it works, so that they have a very clear perception from very early what it takes. I mean, they may want to follow in their parents' footsteps, or they may not. You know, it might switch them off and think, no, I don't need that stress. But let me involve, because it is part of life. And one day they're going to move on, and they have to learn how to budget and how to manage their affairs and how to juggle several things at once. And it is so important that, you know, you use that time when you're home educating to train your children to, you know, be independent, because that's part of, you know, being independent is being able to function financially and to see, you know, understand how it all works. It doesn't just appear, you know, there's no fairy that dust that you sprinkle and things just happen. You know, I take kids to the supermarket, you know, sometimes you've got a recipe, and you get the recipe books and they go through and everything. And then I go to somewhere like Lidl's and said, right, I've got the trolley here. This is what you're doing. Oh, I said, right, go and get your ingredients. And they've got, I said, and don't just look for the most expensive, you look for value for money. And so they'll come back. And so immediately you see them thinking about, okay, you've got several in this range, which is better. And you see them looking at labels and they're working out their budget and said, right, this is the budget. This is how much we have to spend. You make sure that you don't go over that. And they can do it. You know, so that kind of teaching is, you know, and in that one they've got, as you said, Leah, they're doing literacy, they're doing numeracy, they're doing, you know, thinking skills, critical thinking skills, everything rolled into one. And that is life, because education in life is more important than the academic education. Some of the greatest teachers never went to school and never had, you know, had a very, you know, limited education, but look at what the legacies that they've left behind. You know, and we've got a lot of the, you know, famous people who've been home educated because they've had the time to dedicate to their passion that they wouldn't have if they were in school. I mean, you were in school and then you've got after school club and you come home, you've got homework to do. When on earth do you have the time to follow your passion? Let's say if you wanted to do sport or tennis or whatever. I mean, the Williams sisters, they were home educated. You know, and they became top of the game because they had the time when they could train for 8 hours a day if they wanted to. You know, you can't train for 8 hours a day when you're coming home from school, you know, at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. You just don't have the time for it. And you've got like 3 subjects of homework to do before you get to bed. That's nonsense. So, you know, for home education, parents have got to see it in a, you know, people who are considering it in a completely different light. And for every family, it's going to be different. Not at every family, even within the family, it can be different for each child, because you've got one who's interested in this, another's interested in that, and you find ways of working together and help them to follow their passion.
I mean, one disclaimer I want to make, because I know it's really easy to, obviously we're all saying all the benefits of home education. The grass is not always greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. I just want to make that disclaimer, because some people think that sending my child back to school, that's the best thing, because I'm struggling at home. I can't wait for the schools to open back up, so I'm going to put them in school. The grass ain't going to be greener in school unless you recognize any challenges that your child had before the COVID lockdown happened, and you address them as soon as your child goes back. Because I know I've spoken to Cheryl, and she said that parents knew that children were having challenges before the school holidays, before the lockdown. They did nothing about it, and they expect to rock back into school and everything's going to magically disappear without them having put in any work into it. And it's the same with home education. Some people feel that because we share the show reel, we share the highlights of home education, but there are some really challenging parts of home education as well. In the same way, there are some really challenging parts of taking your child to school. So if you do decide you are going to home educate, there are going to be some very beautiful things that you're going to experience with your child, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be all sunshine and roses. And not every child is going to end up a home educated genius. Some children are going to struggle with home education as much as they struggle with being in school. Not everyone is going to become a, you know, self-employed genius, or, you know, be completely calm and happy, because some children really need a social life. I specifically know that there are some children who have been home educated and they're only children, and they did not thrive at all in the slightest. They really needed to go back to school. So when they did go back to school, thankfully the parents that I knew that this happened to, when the child went back to school, it still gave them the opportunity to realize, okay, we weren't happy with school because of X, Y, and Z. That's why we brought the child home. The child wasn't happy at home because they were on their own. So we can use those two pieces of information to ensure that when we put the child back into school, they have the best experience. So yeah, I know we are sharing all the good stuff, but I know this, I'm a pioneer in my family. I'm the first person that's home educated my children for any length of time. So I could be getting this all wrong, fam. I could need to get Ziggy to come round in a minute and sort it all out with Kay quickly behind. So, you know, I'm not saying all of this to say that home education is the perfect solution, but for some of you families, it is going to be the perfect solution. And it is going to sometimes take as much work to have your child at home as it is to send your child to school. Because I know for me personally, when my children went to a summer club, the only time my children have been away from me for any length of time is when they were in a summer club. And that summer club was run by a Black woman who I was very friendly, like I really knew her well. All the teachers were Black. They even came and picked my children up and dropped them back. They were learning dance and art and music and all that kind of stuff. And I was still on the phone to them every single day to complain about something. I was that mum, okay? I was that mum. So I just realized I was that annoying, like to the point where when they took my children on a trip, they were running late and their first words were, "Oh my gosh, we need to get the Salmon children home." That was their words. Because I was that mum. So yeah, you just like, the grass is greener where you water it. It is greener where you water it. And home education is going to be perfect for some of us, and it's not going to be that great for others. Once you understand yourself more and your children more, you're going to be able to make that decision and then create the best situation for you. Because if you choose to put your child back in, like, no one's going to home educate. I think some people think home educating parents judge parents that put their children back into school, and we don't. Because trust me when I tell you, if I could find a school that would take all of my children, and I didn't need to make like 3 trips in the morning, because I've got a 15-year-old down to a 4-year-old. I'd need to do like 3 school trips, and I'm just too lazy for that. I'm too lazy for school runs. When I hear parents talk about my child's got 100% attendance, I like, you're good, because my child wouldn't. They'd have 75 tops. And if it was snowing, that might drop down to 60, maybe 60, maybe 59. I know I'm not adapted to that life. And again, this opportunity can give you the opportunity to be very real with yourself. Son, I'm not about taking you to school, so we're going to do the best we can here with you at home. Let's work out how we can make your home education experience as amazing as we possibly can. I mean, it's the reality. So please, parents, if you're going to send your child back to school, don't think any of us are judging you. Don't do that. Please don't think that at all. And in the same light, like, parents who decide to take your children back to school and you see us home educating, like, until you've lived this home education life, and like Ziggy and Kay, and I'm sure Cheryl and everyone else has said, it's so individualized that someone might come into my home educating home and think, you do nothing with your children. And then they go into Debbie's home educating home and think, oh my gosh, you lot are amazing. And me and Debbie are thinking the exact opposite. Debbie's looking at me like, wow, you're amazing. And I'm looking at Debbie like, you don't do anything for your children. It's that individualized, that any judgment that we put on is going to be misdirected. As parents in general, we do better at just supporting everybody's decision rather than making any judgments on anybody else or ourselves for that matter.
Ziggy, you were going to say something.
I wanted to, 2 things I wanted to add. The financial intelligence aspect. We've added that recently as almost a bonus package. So you sign up for the maths and English, which you do an hour maths, an hour in English, and they're optional classes. So we don't say you have to come to them, but they're there and they're available, and they're so important. They are so... I think because I spend most of my time like in and around children, and you've got to to be able to teach, got to know they live in this almost this Instagram belief type life where they have no concept of almost reality and how things work, especially money, because we live in a society where, because our children are exposed to so many images of people spending money, wealth, all of these things, it's not actually, they don't have a conceptual idea of actually how it works. And I think Kay alluded to it when they were saying like, yeah, by the time I'm 25, I'm going to live in like this penthouse in the Docklands. I've heard kids say this, and yeah. And when I've done the same thing as Kate Breaking, I was like, yeah, no, that's sorry, babe. Yeah, sorry. And once you break, they haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. Like, and you see them sink for every time you go down the budget, they sink further and further and further. And understanding the dynamic of money, how it works, mentality in regards to money, it's really, really vital for our children, because one of the things that they're going to have to come to terms with is the relationship of race and money, because there is that dynamic of race and money, and their expectations, and a lot of the times how we come to see money, how society, how in our culture money is perceived, how it works with our own self-esteem and how we feel about ourselves, because as a culture we tend to spend money in the society for acceptance, and that's something that a lot of our children are programmed with. So the financial education, if you're homeschooling, as I said, is something we offer for free, but as basic as going shopping and really going, not just chucking it, going through the prices, why this has gone up and this, that, and the other. It's really important. And the other thing I was going to say is how your children are educated. I have two children, a boy and a girl, and they're so different. Giving them the opportunity, and I think hopefully during this period, to giving them the opportunity to actually flourish in what they're good at. My daughter, she would go into the back garden and she'll paint, and on her own, put her headphones in, and she's good for hours. Yeah. My son, he wants to be on the road with me. That's all. That is what he's on. What daddy is on is what he's on. Wants to do business. He wants to. I'm gonna go. I've got to run and go and get him now when we're finished. And all he wants to do is be on the road, because his thing is business. That's what he loves. And if you can nurture, and as Leah was speaking about with a young girl who's an artist, if you can nurture that from a young age and you can pick up what that's all about, you've hit the jackpot. Especially if you've got the time to do it. When home educating as well, you have that time to go to those places, to do those things. It's priceless. It's priceless. So yes, it's a wonderful. As Leah said, I'm sure it's not going to be roses and bells, those things. But yeah, it's a beautiful opportunity.
I was going to actually add as well, because there's the comments over here, and Marlene asks you, Ziggy, if do you teach year 6? And Joanna asks, what about the younger years, 6 to 7 years old? Pauline says that she's in agreement with what Leah was just saying. Pauline also says it can be confusing trying to do many things at once. Queen J says everything Leah is saying. Hank Brown is just a comedian on here. He's quite funny. He told me there's a spider behind me. He's saying Wakanda forever.
Yeah, Wakanda forever.
And Marlene also asks, how do we reach UK? Guys, if you're using, I don't know if you're using your phone or your laptops, but to the right-hand side where it is on my screen, there's a private chat. If you all put your website addresses, I think I typed them into the chat already from what I remember, but type them in again so I can copy and paste all your contact details so that people can contact you directly as well. So just look on your phone or your computer, it should be there. And then so people know how to reach you, because Marlene as well is asking, how can we reach you? Selena Hunt is busting up laughing. Hi, Selena, how are you? Can we do a freestyle rap battle at the end of the discussion, starting with Kay? I told you Hank is a comedian. Hank is in America, by the way. And he said, hold on, let me scroll up. Shaz says the description of the school sounds like a prison, hence why I've coined that American phrase, the schools to prison pipeline. Schools are like killing fields, kills our children's confidence, and that's from Queen Lala. Brown Hank says they used to smack with them rulers back in Hooversville. That's where he's from. Selena Hunt says you're so right, absolute fear. I believe that was when you were speaking earlier, Kay, with regards to the schools and the tactics the teachers use towards the children. And I've got Queen Lala, museums with young children, so much fun, seeing life through their innocent eyes. Jennifer Douglas says, when I worked out how much I spend each month for my daughter's tube fare, lunch, and soon to be bus fare, it totals the cost of more education. Brown Hank says, yes, Kay, you smart, bring books back. And then I've asked if anyone's got any questions. Facebook user, your name hasn't come up at 5 p.m. Even as a teacher, I even learn alongside my students. Let me go. Ew. Brown Hank says, nah, I can't teach my son. I'm dumb as hell, to be honest. I need that teacher. Hearts 201123 says, this is amazing. Appreciate you all. Keep it up. Fire. Lovely sister Leah from Facebook user. I'm not sure who that is. Selena Hunt's clapping. Shaz got some fire. Bondon Pam Babylon. Hank Brown says, yes, I hate my son. Real talk. It's like, right. Brown Hank says, agreed. I'm from Hooversville, Memphis. The hood where it's the same situations as London. I walked to school every day in those Jesus sandals, bumping at Tupac. This guy got that about him. And then he writes, Cheryl, there's a spider on your wall, look out. So just in rounding up, we've got 20 minutes. What would be the 5 key things that you'd give parents to walk away with when they're to start home educating, flexi schooling? I'm not sure how much you guys know about the flexi school option. How any of you can support parents. Remember to send me your stuff in the private chat so I can share it. So go. I'll start with you, Ziggy. I can't hear you. Your mic's on mute.
Sorry, just to confirm, 5 tips that I would give parents for flexi schooling.
5 tips you give parents on homeschooling or even flexi schooling, and even as it has been said before by Leah and everyone, not to be too hard on themselves, but just to keep their motivation going, etc., and dealing with the children, because it can be much if you've got more than one as well.
I think you've done the first, which is tune in to and hear all of the amazing speakers today. You've got a wealth of information from there, so you've already done the first thing. The second thing is, what they say is keep it simple. We live in an information age, yeah? My biggest resource or greatest resource, or I think one of the greatest resources on earth, is YouTube. I'm a visual and audio learner, which means I will have something audio playing in the background, or I can just put it up. I can search for any subject, any topic, and find a video on it and go over it. That's amazing. Amazing. We have these things which for sometimes we're addicted to them because of social media and so on and so forth. However, these are huge resources. I've used Instagram posts to analyze and comment on a piece of English, or to speak about the concept or idea of what a juxtaposition is. Use the resources that you would use every day. So if you're a Facebook person and you see, because I see a lot of people post articles and things on Facebook and it's interesting and it's grabbed your attention and it's kind of really riveting, use that resource, discuss it, talk about it, pick it apart, use what you have at your disposal. I know I'm not a kind of boring textbook kind of guy. You with me? I'm not. That's not me. You with me? I'm quite dynamic. I might plan a lesson and then go on my Instagram 5 minutes before the lesson, and something jumps out to me, and I quickly rejig everything.
That's me.
Because we have to be dynamic in our teaching, because the inputs that our children are receiving, the amount of information that they're receiving. I was speaking to somebody the other day, and I was saying, like, a 5-year-old, where we used to speak about age and wisdom, because of the amount of knowledge that you have accessible to you, a 5-year-old can know the type of things that an 8-year-old that would take somebody 80 years to know. They've got access to that information. So use what's at your disposal. That'd be the second thing. The third thing would be a selfish thing, which would be moreeducation.co.uk. We have our revision service, so that can supplement anything you're doing at home, English, maths. We do science one-to-one. We don't do the revision classes. We also have World and African History and Financial Intelligence. Check us at www.moreeducation.co.uk. Check me on Instagram. That's 3. There are some amazing homeschooling networks who, don't get me wrong, some of the WhatsApps, I'm not very good at WhatsApp, so I can't keep up. But there's brilliant information posted in lots of them. Lots of great information posted in all of them. Don't be shy to ask, because I've found, as I spoke about earlier, if you weren't here earlier, I met Kay and I messaged her, and she invited me to her home and sat down with me for 2 hours. I tend to find everybody in these communities are very warm, very kind, willing to share. If you ask, you'll probably get more. I'm somebody where I give out my number. I'm available to talk, and I know that's kind of the general kind of feeling. So don't be shy to ask, even if it feels like a silly question. And the last thing, the fourth and final thing, would be take action. If it feels wrong as a parent, and I know Kay spoke about there being a lot of primarily dealing with a lot of mothers. I would say probably 80% of the parents I deal with are mothers, and mothers, I know from experience with my mum, it's not something that, I don't know, it's not really spoken about or discussed, but this real sixth sense, it's always this gut feeling. My mum knew when I was getting into trouble. She knew every time she told her stomach, and it's his brain that operates inside the stomach, and mothers know when something's wrong. When something's wrong at school with your youth, you know. And I know you go to the meetings and you speak to the teachers and they give you all the, maybe it's because he's you know. Mothers, you know. You might not be able to articulate it in words or whatever, but you know. And if you know something is wrong, please don't dismiss it. Take action now with your child, because nobody really knows your child in what your child needs better than you. And that ties into something that Leah said. Don't feel almost shamed into doing certain things or away. My mum was made to feel quite stupid by her peers because she didn't she didn't kind of go out and do a lot of the fashionable things. She was always spending her money on sending her child here or sending her child there or doing this activity and that activity, and she wasn't a raver and she wasn't part of the in crowd. However, with one of her sons being a journalist, the other one being a teacher, the other one being in some aerospace technology business, blah, 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 blah. The time and effort that she spent 20, 30 years ago, she's reaped the rewards. And it's simply because I remember her speaking about that gut feeling. So if you have that gut feeling as a mother, please take action. If you want somebody to talk to about it, you're not sure, can give me a call, pop me an email, I've posted my details. So yeah, brilliant. I've got to shoot off because it's a beautiful day here in Kingston, Jamaica. The cloud can see the long mountain from here, so we'll be finished in about 15 minutes.
No show off, right? We got some sun over here as well. I don't know, what's the temperatures here? 30-something degrees. So look at how black I am.
I'm gonna
You know,
go and get some lunch now. I think the bread at the bottom of the road, I saw him selling some jelly coconut. So,
however,
you guys. Just have to don't keep the 5 key things. You've got a lot of information. Don't ask. Check. You've got a brilliant expert. And you've got some people really, really lovely willing to share the information. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
good. No, well, I've just posted all you guys' stuff on the Facebook as well as the YouTube as well. So that's what you can see me typing away. Go ahead, Kay, give us your 5 quick points. We've got just 11 minutes and then the thing will cut off.
Okay.
So take 5 and then give Leah 5.
Okay, well, I mean, unlike Ziggy, I don't do a lot of the online. So the only sort of online thing I did, was teaching at one stage a child in Ghana, and they would send the work to me via email. I'd mark it and send it back. I prefer the face-to-face, to the personal touch. If you want to get in touch with me, I've put up my 2 email addresses there. The info at Enterprise Diamond. I must admit, if you want to get a quick response, use the K.Johnston one because I can pick that up on my phone. The other one is only on the desktop, and I don't particularly like getting on that too often because it means that I've committed to sit down to work and I'm all over the place at once. You know, I can deliver, you know, a variety of subjects, and I tend to wrap depending on what the child needs. So, you know, we sit down together and, you know, I can do English, I can do maths up to Key Stage 3, I do science up to Key Stage 3, history, geography, Black history. You know, we dabble in art. We have a STEM afternoon at least, you know, once every 6 weeks. We have a STEM afternoon, we do financial literacy, and we have different ways of delivering that. And it's pretty much child-led. And if something comes up suddenly, you know, I don't operate by pips and bells, you know. So, and you know, we have, you know, sessions where the children feel valued, their work, as I said, we don't have any behavioral issues, and it's just, you know, fun. You know, if you can make learning fun without even realizing that you're actually learning, then you know that you've got it absolutely right. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, my telephone number is 07988-543-745. If you just want some advice or just, you know, how do you get started? You know, by all means, call me and let's talk about it. Because of course, I appreciate that not everybody lives in the beautiful Southeast. So yes, if you know, you need some advice. Yes, Cheryl, you laugh, but anyway, yeah, you know, I'm here to give some tips. You know, we can meet, we can have some resources, anything to get you started. And at any time, if you want to tap in, you know, just let me know. I mean, it keeps, you know, an old brain like me, it keeps me going, etc. But for me, the greatest satisfaction is seeing children move on with their lives and do great things. And, you know, for those of you who are considering home educating, can be the most exciting journey, you know, for your children. And they'll look back, you know, you're actually giving them skills that schools cannot give them, because you're empowering them for independence at a much earlier age than the schools do. You know, I will, you know, when my grandchildren come along, whatever decade that's going to be, I've already said, you know, I'm keeping myself going for them because I'm going to be teaching them. There is no way they're going into any institution as long as I'm alive and thinking and functioning, because I don't want, you know, them to experience bullying and everything else that goes on in school. They don't need, as Leah said, to be triggered by a bell and pips and moving in straight lines and uniforms all the same. No, every child is individual and they have a chance to follow their passions and follow, you know. So, yep, let's talk about it. If you're at a crossroads in your life and you're not quite sure if it's the right thing to do, you know, give me a call, an email, and let's talk about how we can move forward. Yeah, that's my bit. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so my 5 things are to follow Cheryl, follow Kay, sign up to More Education, sign up to Ultra Kids, follow Black British Parent, Debbie from earlier on. Me and Debbie are going to be doing a monthly home education live Q&A so that we can help people ask answer any questions that people have got on home education. I would definitely recommend you start off by sitting down with your child and asking them what they want to learn. Be clear as a parent what you feel is important for them to learn, that you want them to learn, and then create a curriculum or a work plan that respects both of those needs, what your child wants to learn and what you want to teach them. Just very quickly, my home education life is we only work for 5 weeks at a time, and then we take 2 to 3 weeks off, and we actually only work Monday to Thursday, and that helps me to be able to run my business. My husband can work his business, and the children get their time as well. So don't feel that you have to create a something that replicates a school. You don't have to replicate school at home. You can very much create a learning environment that supports your needs as a parent, because your needs are very important, and your children's academic needs as well. Stand in your power when you've made the decision that you feel is best for your pet, for your children, and work forward with that, and make sure you surround yourself with people that can support you being able to fulfill that goal that you've set for yourself. Don't operate in fear. The government doesn't know what they're doing as much as they proclaim to or make it look like they're doing. And like everyone said, no one has that care for your children the way that you do. And you have every right to decide how your child's educational life is going to pan out with their input as well. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for putting this on. And it was nice being with you guys, Ziggy and Kay, today as well.
No, thank you guys for taking part, because as we know, September is fast approaching. Parents are like, and who else, who better to get in on one space, obviously between the two panels, and it's been absolutely stonking. Some people have been online all day, some people have dropped in and out, but everyone has said that they found the information useful, and that's all we need. Once we can share the information, now it's down to you parents to do something with it and actually make it happen. Again, like Leah said, if you need to ask questions, I've posted all of their details so you guys can get bombarded with questions. I've posted all of their details on Facebook and on YouTube, and yeah, the support is there. And don't complain if they can't get back to you immediately, because these are all active people. Leah's got 6 children, as she said. She's home editing, so she'll get back to you as soon as she can. Let me just check the last of the messages. Brilliant, thanks for organising. This is from Zoe Smith. Brilliant, thanks for organising and for sharing all these gems. And that's the thing, you're right. And then Ems Brown says, thank you all for the information. I really appreciate you all. Selena Hunt says, love this, and thanks guys for all of the knowledge. Jennifer Douglas says, this has exceeded all my expectations. Thank you so much. And how much did it cost? 0, because information is out there. So we're glad that, and who posted in the private chat, I'll still post it. We're glad that everyone got something from it, and we're glad that you guys can actually take this information and knowledge. And I tell you what, even though today was free, why don't you guys go to everyone's websites or find out if they got a PayPal and donate to them, whether it be NABS, whether it be Leah, whether it be Black British Parent, whether it be Kay Johnson, whether it be Ziggy, whether it be, who else was on earlier? All of them. £5, £5, £1, £1. This is how we build, because these guys are doing the work out there, and everything costs money. Domain names cost money, all these things. Donate to them. Give them some money. Could you imagine how many people are online if everyone gave £1? Come on now, we need, right? As we said earlier, economics.
Sorry.
Yes, Ziggy.
Sorry, just to add to that, something that we're hoping to start is the exact same things. There are going to be parents who we know won't be able to afford the £85 a month. So even if you can't, we're looking for people to sponsor children from anywhere from £10 a month to £30 a month to be able to subsidise people's tuition. We're also offering scholarships for the most for education. So those are the type of things, exactly what you're saying, where people don't know how to go. There are ways you can get, especially NAB, they take donations. So yeah, 100%. Just adding to what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. That's fantastic. Well, people, I'm going to go to a kids' party now. So it's been lovely having you. Thank you all again. I know we'll speak offline anyway. So we'll definitely see you all soon. Thank you. Enjoy your jelly coconut. Yeah, take care.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. I know she's over there. Get up to mischief.
Thank you.
See you later, guys.
Yes, bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. And there you have it, community. That was a full 100 breakdown on what if you need to home ed or what if you want to home ed and you weren't sure. We had everything from every angle with regards to home education, parenting, finances, resources. There's so much out there. Let's build a home ed network. You know, us guys are going to be speaking offline with regards to that to make sure that the reach is vast, to make sure that the support is there for you. It is about for us, by us solutions. We can't rely on the government or anyone else to do it for us. But as Brother Naya did say earlier as well, let's make sure that if there is funding, we tap into that, but we also have to tap into ourselves as a community and fund the groups and organizations that are already there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. People are there already. Make sure you support them, not just with lip service and about how great they are, but financially as well, because without the finances, we can't continue. So thank you very much. I'm going to have a good evening. Greetings, I'm Debbie Haya, and we will see you again soon. All right, take care.